Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is reborn into Uchiha clan during the Warring Clans era part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Kita trots happily out of the house, a bowl of millet cradled carefully in both arms, and the quail that had spent the night in the covered porch trilling and scuffling around her knees like a feathery eddy. Giggling at the brush of feathers against her bare calves, she scurries out into the middle of the vegetable garden, shifts her grip on the bowl so she can hold it one-handed, then uses her now free hand to scoop up the tiny grains and scatters them across the vegetation. The quails scatter after the seeds, cooing and trilling eagerly. Kita beams, turning around to scatter more millet in the opposite direction. There are lots of insects in the vegetable garden for the quail to eat as well, so it won't matter if they miss a few seeds and the millet sprouts. What is important was that the quail's breakfast is evenly scattered all over the garden, so none of them miss out. Mama said so. Kita is a big girl now, 3 years old, so she is in charge of feeding the quail every morning and bringing them into the porch before it gets dark so the cats don't eat them. She has to count all of them on the way inside, and then go through the garden to see if any of them have laid eggs there rather than in the nest boxes under the edge of the raised floor in the house like they are supposed to. That will be later though. It is only morning and she has given the quail their breakfast, so it is time to get the basket and check the nest boxes for eggs so Mama can make breakfast for everybody else. Mama is going to have a baby in the summer, so Kita is learning to help more because she is going to be a big sister, and big sisters have to set an example. She can make rice balls now, although hers don't look as nice as Mama's, and she knows how to check under the leaves of the plants in the garden for caterpillar eggs so the vegetables don't get eaten and how to sweep the floor and wipe the dust off the shoji. She wants to help with the laundry too, but Mama says she's too small and would fall into the tub, and she isn't allowed to help Mama so yet because she isn't strong enough to stab the hook through the layers without hurting her fingers. Kita is allowed to check the silkworms that live in trays in the loft though, and can count how many trays need new leaves to munch on so Mama can cut fresh branches off the mulberry trees in the garden. She also tells Mama when the silkworms are making cocoons, so Mama can prepare to dry them out in the sunshine, then boil water and reel off the silk. That is a very important job because without the silkworms Mama wouldn't have any silk to do her special embroidery with. Grandma helps with the silk as well, but she says she was too old to go climbing up ladders. Grandma spins the fluffy white silk from the less nice cocoons into thicker thread, which Mama dyes pretty colors in a special kettle with the thin thread and then sews with. In the summer when the hemp is all grown, Grandma spins that too, after Papa had soaked it and Mama and Auntie Tsuyu had beaten and combed it. Grandma spent all autumn spinning hemp and weaving it on the big loom in her room to make sheets for the futons and bags for storing millet and bandages for when people get hurt. She also showed Kita how to twist the thin threads together to make rope for sandals, so she could help. Kita's new sandals have straps she made herself. Kita isn't sure why they didn't dye all the hemp cloth in pretty colors like they did the silk and make kimono out of it, but Grandma scolded her when she suggested it, so there had to be a reason for it. Probably a weird reason that wouldn't make sense because she isn't a grown-up. She does like her brown cotton kimono with tortoiseshell patterns, winter tortoises because Kita is a winter girl, but she wants a green kimono like Mama wears sometimes, and Grandma's weaving is just as soft and nice as the indigo cotton Mama sews into coats for the older boys. Or a green coat. A green coat would be really pretty. She asks Papa about a coat when she takes his bento to the forge, and he ruffles her hair and says the Uchiha were a noble clan and nobles don't wear hemp outer clothes. Only farmers wear hemp kimono, because they can't afford to buy cotton. Kita doesn't think it's fair that she only has one cotton kimono that had belonged to her cousin Ko at first when she could have 2 hemp kimono which are just hers. But Papa looked at her when she said that, so she apologized and watched him work for a little before going home again. Papa makes wire. Mostly he makes steel wire for the clan, but sometimes he makes wire from gold and silver for Mama to embroider with, wire as thin as silk. Andy sometimes says that Mama married Papa because he gave her gold to embroider her own obi with, and Mama always rolled her eyes but never said it wasn't true. Kita knows being Uchiha is important. She has an odd feeling she should live a village with people who aren't Uchiha, but she's run all over and everybody who lives in the cluster of houses around the fancy hall are Uchiha, and everybody who works in the buildings near the river are Uchiha too, and so are the people farming the fields around the houses and the warriors who gather around the shelters on the east side of the village where there aren't any fields. She also knows the warm feeling under her skin is chakra, like the warriors talk about, and that when her grown-up boy cousins breath fire in the evenings to show off they are using chakra. Kita isn't sure when she was told this, but she knows that is what it is, the same way she knows about bridges and sand and dogs and cows despite never having seen any. Like she knows that as well as a Mama and Papa she has a Mum and Dad, but Mum and Dad aren't here. She doesn't miss Mum and Dad, the memories are warm and comforting and she knows they know where she is, so they aren't worried about her being missing. She'd chosen to be here and be Kita with Mama and Papa, and afterwards she would go back to be with Mum and Dad and everybody else who was family that isn't here. She's done all the helpful things Mama asked her to, and Papa is busy, so she's free to go play. Kita is 6 now, and she has a little sister called Tadashina and an even littler sister called Naka, who can't even walk yet. She knows lots more things now, things Mama and her aunties taught her, things she heard other clansmen talking about, and things she remembered for herself. She knows how to stitch a kimono back together after it has been washed, how to patch the heavy quilted jackets the warriors wear so nobody can tell it was ever torn or burnt or stained, how to print the colorful designs on the inside of the coats worn by her male cousins who have learned to fight, and she is now learning to mend the beautiful silk patchwork on the inside of the coats of those clansmen whose lineage is more distinguished. Taijima-sama's wife died the winter before last, and Mama has been made responsible for mending his coat ever since. Taijima-sama's sons don't have really beautiful coats like he does because they're still growing and only the oldest 2 are doing missions anyway, but Kita has been taught to stitch together bits of silk from Ninigi-sama's old coat, which Ninigi-sama gave to Mama to offset the cost of a new coat when he married Nakasama the year before Kita was born. Nakasama, who has the same name as Kita's little sister. There are lots of women called Naka in the Uchiha because the compound is beside the Naka River. Kita likes her name better. There are only 2 other women called Kita, and they are both much older than she is. Mama unstitched the entire outside of Ninigi-sama's coat and cut it down to make a coat for Papa, because Papa is shorter than Ninigi-sama. She also carefully unpicked most of the patchwork lining and is saving the pieces for when Taijima-sama's sons are old enough for proper coats. They aren't old enough yet. Madara-sama is only 9. But Kita is getting lots of practice, and last summer Mama swapped some of Grandma's hemp fabric for Aunt Tsuyu's hemp paper, so Kita could start learning how to copy scroll paintings and prints and turn them into patchwork. Drawing is much easier than calligraphy, mostly because Mama doesn't mind her drawing with her left hand. Kamami-san, who is teaching her to read and write along with the other girls her age, makes her use her right hand and then scolds her for being messy, even though Kita can't help her right hand being clumsier than her left. Kita also knows that if she doesn't do anything, her friend Yahiko-kun and his little brothers Mayoko-chan and Saburo-chan are probably going to die, like they did in the story she remembers. Of course, Yahiko's older brothers Izuna and Madara are going to have horrible things happen to them too, but that's later, so it's less important now. She needs to try and help Yahiko now, or else he is never going to play with her ever again, or show her the koi in the pond of the clan's hall, or climb oak trees with her in the summer to find wild silk cocoons for Mama to reel into green gold thread, or tell her more about chakra. She needs to learn sealing. She doesn't have much chakra, but what she remembers and what she's been taught suggests that sealing doesn't need much chakra. Not like the fire technique Yahiko is so proud of, which Kita can't do at all. She can make enough of a flame to light the iori in the mornings, and Papa taught her how to ignite and tend a slow charcoal burn, but those aren't proper clan techniques like Yahiko's fireball. Unfortunately, learning sealing will mean spending all her pocket money on ink and scavenging old roof tiles to practice on, since paper is expensive. She should probably start by learning to make ink, like Uncle Iwait and his sons Ye and Ikoma. She could say she wants to learn so as not to waste his product for her patchwork designs and for practicing her writing. Uncle Iwait sells his ink to the daimyo's court because charcoal burned using chakra makes finer ink than the normal kind. Kita knows a lot of special Uchiha craftsmanship involves charcoal made using the clan's fire techniques, from their weapon forging to the silk dyes to the colored lacquer on the warrior's armor. They don't sell much of their work. They are too busy fighting the Senju to make much more than they need themselves. But what they do sell keeps the clan fed and equipped through the winter months when nothing grows. Nobody goes hungry, but the adults still worry until missions start coming in again. Kita was too late for Yahiko. He died delivering a message shortly after Naka learned to crawl. She was also too late for Mayoko and Saburo as well, and was almost too late for Ninigi-sama's younger son Hijiri-kun, but she was delivering Hikaku-sama's new coat after staying up late to finish it and let herself into his house with a lantern at the same time as an enemy shinobi was murdering his and Hijiri's little sister Toku-chan. Kita had smelled blood, sensed the stranger's murderous intent, and screamed fit to raise the dead, then dropped the coat and run. The shinobi had chased her out of the house and right into Ninigi-sama and Taijima-sama, who had immediately killed him. They'd already killed the Senju who had snuck into the clan hall and killed Mayoko and Saburo in their beds. After the funerals, Ninigi-sama and his wife had given Kita a length of cotton for a new kimono, dyed vivid red with a printed pattern of white interlocking circles. Kita had accepted the gift politely, been thrilled to realize there was more than enough fabric for an adult kimono, and carefully, meticulously turned the cotton left over from making herself a not quite adult-sized kimono into a bag and an obi to wear with her other kimono. Getting the pattern to line up was tricky, but the bright red obi looks very cheerful against her feather print indigo kimono. She is allowed to wear a proper obi now she is 7, rather than just obi cords. Kita misses Yahiko. He was bright and happy and full of energy, and he'd played all her games even though he thought she was strange for wanting to pretend to be a squirrel and climb trees when playing at being ninja or dragons was cooler. She works out her first seal in the winter of her 7th birthday. It is surprisingly easy. Seals are metaphoric, they let you make one thing like another thing, or at least that's how it seems to her. The seal is there to tell the thing what it is being. The umbrella seal tells the house roof to be like an umbrella and water stops leaking in between the shingles, because umbrellas don't have gaps. It works so well the shingles stop falling off on windy days, because umbrellas are all in one piece so can't shed bits. She's very happy with it. Seals are like playing pretend, and Kita is good at playing pretend. She knows lots of stories, both ones she'd been told by Mama and other clansmen and more that she remembers from before. She puts seals on the storehouses so they can't catch fire, hiding in the space between the two roofs so nobody can see her drawing them. She paints more fire-stopping seals under the stones of the Iori, so sparks will stop singing the Tadame, then sneaks around her aunts' and uncles' houses to do it there too. Then somebody's house is struck by lightning during a storm, so she worked out a seal to prevent that, which forces her to learn the walking on walls chakra trick everybody had done in the Naruto story but that nobody in her clan seems to know about. She already known how to stick to walls, well, to trees as it made climbing less scary, but actually walking up is harder. Kita paints her lighting grounding seal on the Suzumodori on top of the house's roof ridge, with a line down to the ground to dissipate the charge. Doing it to every building in the compound takes her until the spring and gets her in trouble twice for climbing on people's roofs. Papa is very angry when she is caught on the roof of the clan hall, but it was definitely worth it. She feels much safer now. Maybe next she could work out a seal to keep the quail from escaping the garden? Sheena always wants Kita to help when she can't find them, rather than going looking by herself. Even though looking by herself would be quicker than finding Kita and then looking for the quail together. The year Kita will be 8 at the end of is a terrible year. There is more fighting with the Senju. Uncle Katsuma dies hunting boar and a fox sneaks into the house one night and kills half the quail before anybody realizes it is happening. Papa chases it out, then goes and shouts at Susuri-sama, the clan's cat summoner, because keeping foxes out of the compound is the cat's job. Sheena is devastated by all the little bodies, but Mama just gathers them up and has them help her pluck them so they can be cooked, then turns the feathers into pillow stuffing. By the time morning comes, another 2 quail have died of fright, but the rest seem well and 4-year-old Sheena carefully leads the much-reduced group out into the garden. Kita is sent to Angyoko to ask to borrow the male quail she keeps as songbirds so the remaining birds can breed. Angyoko agrees, telling Kita that she and Mama have an agreement that once the birds are grown, Mama can keep the females and she gets the males. There won't be any eggs for several months as the flock recovers, so they will have to trade for them. Probably with Auntie Tsuyu, who has chickens. Kita doesn't like Auntie Tsuyu's chickens very much. They are glossy black like crows and the rooster is very, very noisy. Mama is pregnant again and keeps getting sick, so Kita has to take over cooking and laundry, help Sheena look after the silkworms and help Grandma with the hemp on top of carrying Naka everywhere in a sling. Mama is at least well enough to keep up with her sewing, but Kita has to dye the thread under Grandma's keen eye because Mama can't stand the smell. She doesn't mind so much, it's interesting, and having to help with the hemp gives her the idea of stitching seals. If it worked, nobody would notice them so long as the seals were the same color as the rest of the fabric, and seals and bandages to kill infection and reduce scarring would be helpful. Unfortunately, there is no time at all for experimenting all year. It is all Kita can do to jot down ideas and surreptitiously add the anti-vermin seal to the house to make sure the quail won't get attacked again. She even has to help Papa draw a wire after his apprentice, her cousin Fuhr, dies protecting the clan's quarterly shipment of iron sand. Learning more about wire is interesting and helping lets her feel like she's protecting the clan, but she doesn't have enough chakra to do more than a few hours at a time. She knows she will grow more with age and practice, but she doesn't have much time to practice chakra skills when her days are full of chores and lessons and cousins who have far more chakra than she does, so don't want to play chakra games with her. In late autumn, Papa finds another apprentice. Cousin Ye has decided he doesn't want to make ink and he's got plenty of chakra, and Kita is freed in time to be buried under pickle making and other winter preparations. It snows in November, so Kita spends the whole month before her 8th birthday spinning hemp, coming up with new coat print designs and telling stories to Naka so the toddler won't get bored and scream. Sheena learns to clean under their mother's watchful eye, feeds the quail and learns to make rice balls. Sheena also likes Kita's stories. Grandma mostly likes the ones with a moral lesson, but lets Kita tell the silly ones anyway because they pass the time. All the spinning teaches Kita that she can infuse chakra into hemp, provided she is very, very careful. Too much and the thread snaps. All the filaments exploded. Grandma gets angry with her when that happens. Well, Grandma is grumpy anyway, because Kita's thread is not as evenly fine as it needs to be for weaving, but it's good enough for hemming and sewing seams, so once Grandma has finished each length of material, Kita has to sew the fabric together into sheets, fresh futon covers and various undergarments, all with subtle woven patterns. Noble clan they might be, but only the handful of wealthiest and most influential families can afford cotton underclothing. It being winter, she has more than enough time to try out a few stitch seals on old bits of rag in between helping Grandma. It takes a while to find a method that works. Unlike with ink, a stitch seal is continuous, so several designs have to be adjusted. But by early spring she has made new undershirts for both her sisters, tiny Sharingan eye seals stitched on the inside of the collar over the glands on their throat, so their immune systems can be ever vigilant and retaliate swiftly against illness. She doesn't dare add the seals to her mother's clothes. It would interfere with her pregnancy. Kita knows that for sure, even though nobody has ever explained that to her. But she does sneak them onto her father's undershirts under the pretense of restitching them. With her family wearing new underclothing, she is then free to wash, restitch, repair and embroider their previous sets, along with her own. Grandma won't let Kita touch her clothes, so she will have to do without seals. Grandma is tough though. Her new baby sister is born in February, so with Mama busy looking after little Midori and teaching Sheena to sew, Kita has to look after Naka. She has a new seal, a leash that doesn't let Naka run out of sight, and lots of mending to do, as Taijima-sama needs all his clothes checking over now the spring season is beginning. Mama has a newborn to look after and Sheena to train, so Kita sits in the sunshine on the edge of the engawa, poring over her clan head's clothes and keeping an eye on Naka as the toddler runs around under the mulberry, pear, persimmon and plum trees between their house and Aunt Tsuyu's, chasing insects and getting covered in dirt and grass stains. She doesn't quite dare stitch seals into Taijima-sama's underclothes. He has an active Sharingan and the clan's bloodline lets people see chakra. But she decides to try dyeing some cotton thread indigo, so she can stitch seals between the layers of his coat where he is less likely to notice them. Of course, she will have to have some seals in mind for that to be worthwhile. She will have to think up some new ones that would be useful. Seals against damage, maybe? Seals to spread impact? How would she even test those? She isn't even sure how well her immune system boosting seals work, although Sheena was only sniffling with a cold for a few days last week despite usually needing a full week to throw one off. Speaking of which, she needs to embroider some inside little Midori-chan's blankets. Kita is 8 now, so she has more responsibilities. She learns about mending screen doors and making new tatami rather than just mending old ones, about how much things cost and how much to charge people for her work, how to bargain for things and how to determine the quality of rice and beans and pottery and washi and salt and cotton. Well, starts to learn at least. There is a lot to memorize. There are new words and kanji to learn as well, which keep her busy. Not so busy she doesn't notice the tension though. Last year was hard for the clan. More people died than usual, and everybody blames the Senju. Kita agrees that the Senju sending people to murder Taijima-sama and Ninigi-sama's younger children was really horrible, but the clan then going and murdering the Senju's children and getting killed was their own choice. They didn't have to do that. Taijima-sama could have kept the high ground and got the daimyo involved. Well, Kita thinks so, but she knows she doesn't really know anything about politics. She just knows that when her clansmen say honor they often mean my right to do whatever I want and call it a good thing, and that most of her extended family care more about vengeance than about improving things. Which is sad, but there isn't anything she can do about it. Yes, she does want peace, but there's no way to force peace to happen. To get peace, everybody involved needs to be equally invested. That way nobody wants to break it. Kita spends spring weeding in the garden around the quail, surreptitiously sneaking into other people's roofs to paint the umbrella seal in them so the endless rain doesn't wash everybody away, and learning to defend herself. She is not a shinobi and is never going to be one, but Papa wants her to know her way around a knife, so she will learn for him. Having her own knife will mean being allowed to do more foraging in summer and autumn too, which will be exciting. She might even be allowed to bring home some of the oak branches with wild silkworms on them, rather than waiting for them for spin cocoons and looking for them then. Grandma says she's too young to spin silk, but as Kita gets better with hemp, Grandma might be willing to spin more silk for her, and she can at least reel the higher quality cocoons now. Silk is more valuable, even though wild silk doesn't dye at all well due to being naturally greenish gold, and now there are 7 people in the house. Kita knows they will need more food to feed everyone. Mama has expanded the garden into the hemp field this year and lengthened the field towards the river to make up for it, but that might not be enough. More silk would help. There's nothing wrong with green. Who knows, she might even find enough cocoons that Grandma will decide to start saving up silk for a proper formal kimono. Grandma wears her silk kimono all the time, well, all the time she's working indoors, but Mama doesn't. Mama says having children is a messy business, so it's better to wear cotton, because cotton is easier to wash. Which, well, having seen Naka and now Midori burping up milk on Mama as babies, Kita has to agree with her. The apron doesn't cover up there. Her biggest problem with being 8 is that her hair is long now and her parents won't let her cut it, even though wearing it up in a bun makes her neck ache. Kita takes to braiding it, which get tattooed at by grandma as a masculine style but is tidy enough that nobody makes her stop. Kita doesn't know for sure what happened, but at the height of summer Taijima-sama brings his heir to the house and informs Mama that he is commissioning a proper quilted jacket for Madara-sama. This means that Kita has to carry Midori around while she works as well as keep an eye on Naka, because Mama is busy restitching the patchwork silk pieces from Ninigi-sama's old jacket and cutting new ones for the design in Madara-sama's new jacket. Kita helped Mama with the design last year, Prince Okunanushi helping the hair of Inaba on the riverbank and it prophesying his successes. But she isn't going to be allowed to help sew it because Naka and Midori need to be looked after and Tadashina isn't old enough to do that yet. Of course Shina isn't old enough to help Mama either, but she is old enough to take over some of the chores while Kita learns about making gold wire fine enough to wrap around silk thread from Papa. She can't make the wire of course, but her fingers are nimble and strong enough that she can wrap the soft, flat wire around silk tightly and neatly enough that Grandma leaves her to it. Kita wishes Taijima-sama hadn't decided to send his son onto the battlefield so early, so she could have had time to get good enough at embroidering that Mama would have let her do the work. Then she could have sewn seals into his coat. As it is, she takes advantage of Mama being busy and Naka and Midori being too young to pay close attention to work out more seals. A little cautious experimentation leaves her with seals to calm tempers, improve reflexes and dexterity, strengthen the fabric they are sewn onto to the point that a knife blade pressing on it doesn't cut the fibers. It may not shield against a sword but it will do something, and banish nightmares. She stitches the anti-nightmare seal into her own pillow right away. She is probably going to need it. She knows more about war than most girls her age and her memories are not at all reassuring when it comes to the many bad things that could happen to Madara-sama. He's not even 12 yet. Admittedly Kita is only 8, but nobody is making her kill people. Part of that is not being born in a warrior family, part is her lacking the chakra for it but mostly it is because she is a girl and hasn't shown the drive or aptitude for it. If she were a boy she would be expected to learn from Papa, but there would also be more pressure to learn to fight as well. Madara-sama's father leads the clan, so fighting is all he is ever going to be expected to do. Kita is 9 when she gets her own heavy cotton craft apron and her first proper commission. Taijima-sama has decided that newly 11 Izuna-sama is old enough to join his brother on the battlefield come spring. Seeing as Tadashina is nearly 6 now, she gets to teach 3-year-old Naka to do the easy chores while Mama looks after Midori and watches Kita as she fits and stitches the silk pieces together, keeping an eye on the weave of each little piece so that the resulting work isn't lopsided or inflexible. Everything has to be slightly larger than it looks like it needs to be, so that it will pad out properly over the lining and won't inhibit Izuna-sama's movement on the battlefield. The coat also needs to be big enough that he won't immediately grow out of it. Kita thinks it's dumb to call a snotty boy of 11 Sama, but Mama is doing it so she does too. His coat will have Ryujin coiled inside across the upper back and down the sleeves, complete with a red and white coral palace rising up from the hem and swirling waves at the neckline. It is going to take her a long time, several weeks at best, just for the design, and she will then have to carefully sew the backing fabric into the sturdy outer indigo coat over another layer of padding and quilt that too, this time in neat lines rather than following the patchwork design. Kita is planning on sewing as many seals as she has time for onto the backing fabric as well, especially at the collar and cuffs. Fireproofing and strengthening seals in particular. Being left in peace to work for hours on end is surprisingly enjoyable. Mama even lets her off her usual chores. All in all, the only fly in the ointment is that, despite being briskly pleased by the quality of his son's new coat, Taijima-sama very clearly can't be bothered to remember Kita's name. Ninigi-sama knows her name. The winter she turns 10, Grandma decides her spinning is finally even enough to be used for weaving and promptly starts teaching Kita to set up a seated loom like the one she rarely gets up from between summer and spring. Grandma also starts explaining things that Kita had kind of guessed at but never had confirmed. The decorative coats your mother makes are one of our clan's precious treasures, and it is good to see you have the patience, dexterity, and discerning I needed to both complete an existing pattern and create a new one. However, weaving is a necessity, so no matter how little talent for it you may have, I will expect you to persevere until you are at least competent. Should you discover a talent for it, I will instruct you in how to weave a pattern. However, I do not expect you to. Your mind is too swift, and you are too enamored of novelty and variety. Tadashina is more methodical than you are and shows a greater appreciation for subtlety and repetition, so I expect she will be my successor. I wove Hitomi-sama's wedding kimono when she married Taijima, and I hope that by the time Madara-sama marries, Shina-chan will be skilled enough to dress his bride. Mama had been taught by Grandma's mother, her own grandma, but Kita's grandma had learned weaving from her father's mother, who had been a civilian and joined the Uchiha clan along with her son when he married great-grandma. Yes, Grandma, Kita says obediently. She has never been particularly interested in weaving, unlike Shina, who will happily sit beside the loom and watch for hours, but she knows that without Grandma's many hours of dedicated work, everybody in the house would wear underclothes with more patches and darns, and the bedding would be similarly threadbare. The clan would also have fewer bandages to wrap wounds, and the clan's fighters would have less of the chemically treated fireproof wraps to protect their arms and legs with in battle. Clothing and protection are important things and need to happen regardless of how little Kita is interested in weaving, as one day she will have a home of her own and need to both keep her family in undergarments and contribute to the wider clan. She will also one day have to weave dyed silk into short bolts for the patchwork coat linings, so it is definitely important. Setting up a loom is hard, even with only half the number of threads as Grandma is using. Kita will be starting off weaving bandages, as they can be of indifferent quality, and nobody will care if the weave is uneven. They are only going to be boiled and wrapped around injuries after all. Working out a way to weave seals into them is going to have to wait until she actually knows what she's doing and Grandma isn't scrutinizing her every move. Once her work is passable, Grandma will likely turn all her attention to Tadashina. Her little sister is 6 after all, more than old enough to start learning a proper craft. Kita was repairing quilted jackets at 6 and learning to make figured patchwork. Sure enough, a few days later, once Grandma has taught Kita the basics and ensured that she knows what she is doing, Papa fetches the frame of another loom out of storage. Grandma then starts giving Sheena a much more detailed lesson on maintaining a loom, setting it up, and what all the pieces are called and what kinds of fabric they are used for. Kita listens with half an ear. Weaving bandages is excruciatingly, mind-numbingly simple, then loses interest. Singing under her breath makes everything go faster and also distracts Midori, who is still a bit young to understand what don't touch means. Untangling her grubby-fingered little sister from the loom is not something Kita wants to have to do, today or ever. Weaving bandages leads to delivering bandages, which introduces Kita to a part of the clan she'd not seen much of before, the pharmacy and the surgery. They were near the clan shrine, which Kita had never actually visited. Her parents and other relatives have though, mostly at festivals. All the histories and kami were all very well as stories, but she didn't personally believe in them. They weren't who she dedicated her previous life to, so even if they did exist they had no hold over her soul. The largest feature of the pharmacy is the herb garden surrounding it. Kita had been fed various medicines for coughs and colds and watched as the clan's pharmacist, who writes regularly to the Nara clan, who are much more focused on medical matters than the Uchiha, examined her younger sisters and prescribed poultices and ointments, and teas and breathing in burning herbs. She's never actually visited Yumiori-san though. Yumiori-san is high-ranked, both due to her birth into the main family of one of the clan's lineages and due to being the clan's only pharmacist. She looks about the same age as Grandma and talks to Grandma like they know each other better than the usual. I see you regularly, and we are in the same clan. That happens when there are over 500 Uchiha, and doesn't have an apprentice. Well, doesn't have a proper apprentice. Wazuru is the clan's surgeon, responsible for stitching wounds and setting bones, but he is a retired warrior missing his left leg below the knee and is mostly there to hold people down while Yumiori-san works and doesn't really care for the pharmaceutical side of things. Kita suspects that is because he is bad at reading, but is not about to ask. Wazuru is Papa's age and asking would be rude. Unlike Grandma, Yumiori-san likes to talk. Kita-chan. Ah, I see you are finally learning to weave. Not to say your mother shouldn't have nurtured your talents. The clan's coats are important, and it is only proper for our leaders to be dressed as is fitting for their station. And with 4 daughters it's important to ensure you can all contribute to the clan. Your Grandma Fushimi has very high standards too. I know my sister wanted to apprentice her Naka-chan to her but was refused. Satomi was terribly offended at the time, but Naka-chan was happy following our brother into chemistry and pyrotechnics, at least until she married and took in all those orphans from the warrior families. She loves children, does my niece. Let me look at those bandages. Not at all bad for a first effort. This loose weave is perfect for wrapping injuries, Kita-chan, so don't pull too tight and do your best to keep the tension even. Wraps for shinobi need to be stiffer, so they can be treated and made impervious to flame, so when weaving those you add an extra dozen threads in the warp, to make a denser weave while keeping the overall width the same. I'm sure your grandma will show you once you've convinced her you can be trusted with more complex work. She chuckles, shaking her head as she rewraps the parcel of bandages and puts them in a basket with other similar bundles. Thank you, Yumiori-san, Kita murmurs. Is there a need for many bandages? The gods be willing, this year will not be as bad as the year Taijima-sama's younger sons died, Yumiori-san says gravely, shaking her head. So many deaths, both on the battlefield and off it. I would hope for more, but I'm told that the daimyo of tea is starting another trade war with the daimyo of fire, so the warriors are likely to be away for months at a time, and will lose more to supplying them. The older lady patted her on the head absently. You're a good, dutiful girl, Kita-chan, making the clan strong. Would weaving more bandages help, Yumiori-san? Yumiori-oba is fine, Kita-chan. More bandages would be lovely, dear. The warriors clear me out completely when they go on campaign, and then there's always somebody falling out of a tree or mishandling an axe that needs to be patched up before my stocks have been replenished. You're a good girl offering to help. Thank you, Yumi Orioba. Kita takes this to mean that sneaking seals into her finished bandages would be very helpful and also very unlikely to get traced back to her, since just about every woman in the village who doesn't fight or work iron weaves bandages, and they pass through enough pairs of hands that anybody pinning her down as the responsible party is very unlikely. She has stitch seals to keep wounds sterile and prevent sepsis now, which she hopes will work as the theory is sound, and to encourage muscles to connect themselves back together how they were before the injury, and will probably stitch her immune-boosting seal into everything too. It can't hurt. If a daimyo is going to hire all the clan's warriors for a single campaign, well, maybe not all but certainly the entire Outguard, then there is going to be a push for supplies and equipment. Madara-sama is probably going to need his coat letting out. He's 13 now and getting taller very quickly. Mama will probably let her do that when everybody else's coats need checking over for rips and wear, which means an opportunity to add seals into his coat lining to match Izuna's. She has certainly spun enough hemp this winter to not have to worry about running out of thread. For the daimyo samurai, the military season runs from late June to mid-September, through the summer after the rice planting is over and the fields have been flooded, up until it is time for the harvest to be gathered in and weighed so that a certain percentage can be sent to the daimyo as tax. For shinobi, the military season begins in spring with the cherry blossoms and ends mid-autumn, after the daimyo has collected his annual rice tithe. Quite a few local landowners hire shinobi to protect their offering on its way to the capital to ensure that all of it arrives. Those landowners also tend to pay in rice, which gets the clan through the winter until fresh contracts are offered in the spring. With a war in the cards for the year, Kita decides to be proactive and suggests to Mama that they get an early start on repairing and replacing coats. The weather is still bitter, it being February, but Mama gets around that by inviting one of the smaller warrior households over for a meal and having Kita go over their coats with her, by lantern light on the englewood behind the weatherboards, stitching and patching and circulating her chakra for warmth while Grandma entertains. A few sessions later word gets around. Kita and Mama spend the tail end of the winter being invited over to practically everybody's house and checking over their coats in exchange for meals and tea. Actual leaf tea, rather than just in cups to drink. She even gets a little canister of sencha from Niniji-sama and Nakasama, which is much finer than anything she has ever drunk at home before. The best tea is kept for guests, so Kita mainly drinks kakicha, twig tea. She has drunk more sencha in the past month than in all of her life before. She even gets invited to the clan hall, where she spends an entire day meticulously unpicking Madara-sama and Izuna-sama's coats and washing them, then another day stitching them back together again as Mama does the same with both of Taijima-sama's coats. Madara-sama has indeed grown and Izuna-sama has too, if not quite as much, so both coats are let out. Kita also removes some of the roughly stitched patches from both boys' coat linings, repairs carried out by firelight in the field after skirmishes, and replaces them with more subtle ones that match the design, complete with suitable decorative stitching. She also sews as many seals as she can into Madara-sama's coat lining and checks the integrity of the ones in Izuna-sama's coat, unpicking and replacing a few that have given out. She takes great care to do that part while Taijima-sama is meeting with somebody in the hall's central reception room. She doesn't know what he would do if he caught her, but she doesn't think he'd give her the benefit of the doubt, even though she is a clanswoman. Even if he did, Kita doesn't want to be pushed into making explosive seals or other things for killing people. She wants to help and nurture and protect, not kill. Killing has never solved anybody's problems, no matter what Izuna-sama thinks. The 12-year-old has evidently got hold of some sophistic philosophy scroll or other, and is sprouting his newfound belief in the cyclical nature of fate to everybody who stands still long enough. He clearly finds the idea that everything he does is set in stone before he even begins to be comforting, but Kita can't stand the nonsense babble. She eventually has to politely request that he stop distracting her, which makes him stomp out of the room in search of his older brother. Kita does not even believe in fate, let alone in a cycle of inevitability. Kita believes that every single person has power over their own future and is capable of changing it, for better or for worse. She also believes that there is no such thing as a divine mandate beyond be kind to one another, and that the world is inherently too complex for human understanding, so the best that any one person can do is to find contentment in the present, and not make themselves miserable striving after impossible ideals. She doesn't believe in honor or pleasing her ancestors either, which will likely be a sticking point sooner or later. Her ancestors are dead, well, most of them are, and they don't get a say. Their lives are over and done with. Her life is for her, and at most for any future children. It is her memories of another time and place that make her roll her eyes in private at Izuna-sama, who is almost 2 years older than her. She knows to her very bones that the world is wider and more subtle than his father has raised him to recognize. considering the endless conflict with the Senju as inevitable makes for obedient warriors who do not question the never-ending parade of injury and death, and thus do not bring into question the stability of the clan hierarchy. Madara-sama at least sees that peace would be good for the clan. The entire fighting force of the clan being hired by a single client is very different to the usual missions in handfuls and dozens. Kita learns that it's not the just warriors who go, numerous wives and sisters go too, to cook and carry and tend to the injured and trade for supplies on the move. Also to spy and listen to gossip and cultivate friendships with influential civilian women, who pass on information of their own to maintain the privilege of a friendship with a lady of the nobility. The clan compound is very empty with half of its inhabitants gone. Ohabari-sama, Taijima-sama's sister, is the highest-ranking person left behind, and the guards patrolling the land around the compound are made up of the teenage, the injured, part-time craftspeople, and the middle-aged. After planting is over, Kita finds herself with far less to do than usual, so approaches Hikaku-sama to ask for shuriken lessons. She's capable of defending herself with a knife now. Papa has made sure she knows where to stab, but being able to throw something from a distance rather than having to wait for an enemy to get up close is probably a good idea. Hikaku agrees on the condition that she drops the sama. A dozen of her girl cousins take an interest as well, which gets more of the older boys interested in teaching, and it becomes a regular thing. Kita is never going to be very good at it, unlike her cousins Kawa and Maya and Sato, who get extra lessons and will probably demand coats of their own next spring, but she doesn't need to be. She just needs to be good enough to get away and raise the alarm. Hikaku-kun is very serious about teaching her and very, very capable in his own right. Kita respects Ninigi-sama very much for letting Hikaku stay at home with his pregnant mother and two little brothers. Hijiri is 9 but Hidaka is barely weaned, rather than dragging him out onto the battlefield like Taijima-sama is doing with his sons. As summer gradually crawls to a close, Kita realizes Mama is pregnant again. She will have another younger sister not long after she turns 11. Well, it could be a boy, but being one of 4 sisters means Kita doesn't think it's very likely, just in time for Naka to start teaching Midori how to do the chores. Tadashina is already settling firmly into being Grandma's apprentice. It will probably be made official soon if it hasn't been already, what with Shina being 7 now and wearing obi. And Ye is now good enough that Papa is letting him do more than prepare charcoal and sort iron. She doesn't know how many clansmen are going to come home. 2/3 of the tea daimyo's wages are brought to the clan compound every month, in salt and iron and mulberry paper and the promise of rice, escorted by scornful samurai or scrupulously respectful shinobi from clans that the Uchiha have loose alliances with, like the Akimichi, Yamanaka and Nara clans, the Fuma or the Hagoromo. Having less to do, and with a reduced risk of running into Senju outside the compound, Kita wanders further afield than usual, gathering wild greens and digging up roots to take home and eat or plant in the garden, and manages to get her hands on a truly unexpectedly large quantity of wild silk by way of bringing home oak branches covered in caterpillars and keeping them in trays alongside Mama's silkworms. She has to make the extra trays herself. She cobbles them together out of hemp paper and broken floorboards, and regularly bring in fresh branches, but the result is well worth it, 4 times as many cocoons as she has ever found herself before. Mama tells her that she is old enough to decide for herself if she wants to rear her own silk moths, so Kita only dries 3/4 of the cocoons and lets the rest hatch, setting up a tent of old sheets for the moths to fly about in at night, and branches for them to lay their eggs on. She takes care that all the hatching cocoons are on the smaller side. A larger cocoon can be a sign of a caterpillar having been parasitized, so that her moths will all hatch, and that the cocoon itself is well made. The silk will all be greenish gold, but Kita likes the color. It's pretty. This autumn Grandma has promised to teach her to spin her own silk, since it is hers and she won't be wasting Mama's cocoons trying to learn, and has unbent enough to inform her that the silk from the split cocoons the egg-laying moths came out of is also valuable despite it not being possible to spin it as finely. Monks will buy it, because the caterpillars did not die to produce it, so that will be a new market the clan can take advantage of. Wanting to preserve the spirit of that market, Kita sets her moths free out of the loft window after they have stopped laying eggs. Maybe they will lay more eggs outside as well and visit the flowers in the garden, and even if not, the bats will enjoy eating them. She has already reeled and thrown the silk from the cocoons which were of high enough quality to allow for it, so even if she never manages to spin silk properly she still has thread. Ninigi-sama doesn't come home. Naka-sama is so distressed by his death, right at the very end of the fighting, so late they even bring his body home rather than just his ashes, that she goes into labor early. It ends up being 2 bodies on the pyre. Ohabari-sama takes over raising Hikaku, Hijiri and Hidaka, and Hikaku has to name his tiny, premature sister that Naka-sama's older sister Tsugi-san is wet nursing alongside her own son. He calls her Benton. Kita stitches a patchwork blanket out of colored cotton scraps as a gift and hides as many immune-boosting seals in it as she thinks she can get away with. Winter arrives as she is snowed under with mending the coats of the living and taking apart coats whose owners are dead so the material can be reused elsewhere, the cold lingering in bitter frosty mornings and persistent sleet as she learns to spin her silk. Silk is both easier and harder to spin than hemp. It is stronger and stretches much more, but the fibers are much finer and smoother as well as less even in length, which makes them difficult to handle. Well, her lower quality wild silk is at least. She cheats a little with chakra to help her keep the thread thickness even, which had the added benefit of ensuring she will be able to stitch seals with it later. She leaves the broken cocoons until last, as those fibers will be even shorter and will take far more care. In the end it is Grandma who spins those for her, while Kita spins more hemp in return, and shows her how the resulting thread is thicker and less even, but that in this case it is considered proof of quality and an indication of character. It really goes look nice in that shade of green. Little Benton-chan survives the winter, much to many people's surprise. There is no war in the spring, which is a relief in some ways but stressful in others. Just as her clan is all at home and dependent on whatever missions come in for income, so are the Senju. They have plenty of necessities stockpiled, but they are low on weaponry and iron and need to trade for lacquer and leather to replace and repair armor plates. Kita overhears her parents and Grandma talking about whether to trade her thrown thread directly or weave it into bolts first. There is not enough of the piece silk to be worth weaving with unless it is turned into a shawl or obi, but Grandma judges the other 3/4 to be enough for 2 whole kimono, one of reeled silk and one of spun. There is also enough of Mama's silk that weaving a kimono's worth and then painting it would be a worthwhile investment, rather than her usual practice of weaving single bolts and dyeing them various different colors along with skeins of thread so that she does not run out of supplies for her patchwork. War means looting, and several warriors brought back variously damaged kimonos of both cotton and silk, some of which were exchanged with Papa for wire or with Mama for discounts on new coats, for growing sons and nephews. Mama is unlikely to run short, even if both Madara and Izuna need bigger coats this year and Taijima decides he wants a new one as well. Papa says that the money from Kita's reeled silk kimono will be set aside for her dowry. Not having even thought about marrying yet, she is 11, Kita finds that a little uncomfortable. It is a relief to be able to pretend she didn't hear anything and be gratefully accepting when the next morning Grandma suggests that Kita allow her to weave all her wild silk into figured kimono they can then sell. The whole point of bringing in the silk had been to provide more money for her family, so Kita is happy that it is helping. Mama is due to give birth any day now and the knowledge that there will be extra income to keep everybody fed is a tremendous relief. That it is very likely that Mama will also be teaching her to paint on silk this year. She already knows how to paint on cotton, as that is how all the lower-ranking warriors' coat linings are decorated, is something to look forward to. It is spring and Kita has a baby brother. A brother. Mama is over the moon over little Jonin, but Kita is mostly tired. The house now has 3 adults and 5 children in, and there's really not enough space for all of them. Her younger sisters might not notice, having grown up like this, but Kita remembers when it was just her parents and Grandma, well, and Sheena for some of that, and she misses the quiet. She really misses the quiet. It being warm enough to sit on the engoe to work helps, even with all the rain. Most of the wind comes from the other side of the house, so the floor remains dry and she can sew a new coat for 14-year-old Madara, who has indeed grown right out of his old one, away from the noise and mess. Tadashina is learning from Grandma, so can hide in Grandma's room and watch as she weaves the wild silk to produce a complex crane-figured pattern. But Naka is loud and cheerful and Midori is much the same, so the 3-year-old is happy to bounce after her next oldest sister and learn how to look after the quail and sweep the floors. Izuna is not getting a new coat, despite having grown out of his old one. He will fit into Madara's old coat once Kita has taken it in a bit. She would have scavenged the Ryujin design she stitched 2 years ago as materials for Madara's new coat lining, but Izuna had thrown a fit and insisted on keeping it, and Taijima-sama has paid extra to let him. So Kita has sewn his old coat lining onto sturdy indigo canvas backing panels so it can be displayed, and the loud 13-year-old has already carried it off to hang in his room. Kita would be lying if she didn't admit to being a little flattered. Madara's old hair of Inaba coat needs a little touching up and she is probably going to entirely replace the outer layer and padding, so many patched burns and hastily stitched tears, but the lining is fundamentally intact and that is what matters. Now she knows more about the evils of campaigning. Everybody complained about their clothes smelling moldy after too much rain, and no coat has escaped unseen from people using low-level fire techniques out of desperation. She has her medical disinfecting seal to add, which will probably work decently well against unpleasant smells and unwanted flora. Hikaku is probably going to want a coat soon. Now he is the head of his household with 2 little brothers and a baby sister to provide for. His only being 12 doesn't mean anything now his father is dead. Taijima will consider him old enough. Madara's new coat is going to be adult-sized, although it's not going to look it, Madara is not actually adult size yet, so his coat will be taken in at the seams and hems. He's vanishingly unlikely to manage to grow out of it though, seeing as she's working off Taijima-sama's measurements in terms of total length. Taijima-sama has already paid in advance for a full-size coat, including extra gold and silver that Papa and Ye are turning into wire for her to transform into thread. Only the best for the heir to the clan, especially since Madara is probably going to be wearing this coat until it either falls apart or he dies in it. All the more reason to reinforce it. He probably needs new undershirts too. She should offer to make them, to ensure everything is the right size and sneak more seals into the seams. When summer arrives, Kita discovers that she has grown too tall for her yukata. She hadn't noticed at all. Grandma purses her lips and looks Kita up and down, making her realize that her calves are visible beneath the hem of her nagajuban, and her wrists are sticking out of the sleeves as well. She suddenly feels unkempt. You, Grandma says forbiddingly, are going to be tall. I can tell already. Minami, get one of your spare kimono out of storage while I ask Tsuyu for a yukata. Auntie Tsuyu's husband Uncle Safuri is a shinobi, and he buys her a new yukata every year or so just because he can. In the summer she wears them on alternate days, so as to show them all off and not wear out any one of them more than the others. Kita will probably end up wearing the oldest or plainest one, but that isn't really important when she is going to have her first adult yukata. And a proper grown-up kimono as well. She gets to dress like an adult. Grandma comes back with an unexpectedly new-looking yukata set showcasing a large water iris print. Tsuyu thinks this one will look good on you, since you're going to be tall and have the proper Uchiha figure. Now take off your clothes and let me see how much this needs hemming. Implied is that Auntie Tsuyu takes after the mother of Grandma's civilian father, who had apparently been short and stout. Grandma isn't very tall, but she isn't very wide either. Mama is taller, but also a bit more solidly built. If Grandma thinks Kita is going to have the proper Uchiha figure, what that means is that she is probably going to be tall and slim. Tall like Mama, but slim like Grandma. After standing still for the yukata fitting, Kita has to let Grandma put Mama's clothes on her, plain undergarments, as well as the very pretty hawk brown kimono with an all-over hemp leaf pattern in red and beige with white accents, so that she can decide how much to turn them up. Kita will not be involved in that decision, so once Grandma is satisfied she changes back into the freshly hemmed yukata set and heads outside. Her moths need more oak leaves to eat and Mama's need mulberry leaves. After the success Papa had selling the kimono material Grandma made from her silk, Kita wants to continue contributing to the family. She is probably never going to be as good at weaving as Tadashina seems likely to become, but she can probably manage a simple Bishamon tortoiseshell pattern if she tries hard. She wants to be able to weave her own silk into more than just plain bolts. Yes, a plain kimono can be beautifully painted or embroidered, and she helped Mama decorate one with bush clover and vivid bellflowers against a delicate, almost misty blue-green background, but Kita is never going to be able to wear a painted kimono. She's not important enough to do the kind of official social visiting that requires a colored tomzode or a tsuksage kimono. A plain silk kimono with a subtly woven pattern, however, could be equivalent to either a very fine common or an iramuji, which she could wear regularly. When she is 20, she will wear her lineage's old and very beautiful furisode for her coming of age, and when she marries, she will inherit a black tomzode from her husband's lineage, at best be given Grandma's, since Mama is her oldest daughter and Kita is Mama's oldest, but she secretly wants a new kimono of her own choosing. One that reflects her own tastes, not those of a relative or the wider clan. It probably isn't going to happen until after she's completely grown up and maybe even married, but it's a nice dream to have. Mostly because it's something she can probably achieve with a little forethought and care, since it doesn't depend on anybody else getting involved. It's a lean year as far as shinobi work goes, which means more pushing and posturing from the senju and lots of injuries on patrols along the edge of Uchiha lands. Uncle Safuri spends several weeks nursing broken ribs. This means a high demand for bandages, but also a need to wash all the used bandages so they can be reused. Kita is enlisted to help with the soaking in cold water to remove stains, then the boiling to properly cleanse impurities, and the folding after the bandages have dried in the sunshine. She uses up most of her stash of infused thread to stitch sterilizing and immune-boosting seals into more the bandages. It's a very worthy cause. On the upside, there are fewer injuries on outside missions, but that is due to there being fewer missions at all, which in turn means less money. Taijima-sama travels to the capital for a month with his inner circle and returns with a permit to expand the Uchiha's farmland slightly, so they can grow more beans and grains. Most of it will be soy followed by buckwheat in the late summer, but there will be adzuki beans as well, probably winter squash and maybe another orchard. Next year, anyway, there is only enough time left before winter to fell the trees and clear the undergrowth in preparation for spring planting. The tree felling at least provides its own opportunities. Kita spends some of her precious silk money on boards for proper caterpillar trays and carefully transfers the eggs the hatched moths have laid. Having cultivated this year's caterpillars from the egg, she had nearly twice as many as last year and had to do a lot of tree climbing for fresh leaves. She has planted 3 acorns in broken pots in the interests of maybe not still having to climb trees in 5 years' time. Mama just snips branches off her mulberry trees, and Kita can probably do the same with oaks if she coppices them to stay short. She can even give the stripped branches to Papa later, to dry out then burn to charcoal. Twice as many caterpillars mean twice as much silk. She only allows the same number of cocoons as last year to hatch, otherwise she would be completely overwhelmed come spring. Spinning all the lower grade and hatched cocoons is going to be her main activity through the winter, but at least silk is valuable enough, and Tadashina and Naka are old enough, that Mama has reduced her chore load in light of her other contributions to the household. Her main domestic task these days is cooking, which Mama is using to teach her how to make all the various dishes that are served at different times of year, and how to prepare all the different ingredients. Kita has come a long way from wobbly rice balls made with clumsy 3-year-old hands. She still has just as far to go though. She may be good at pickling by now, but Mama expects her to be able to make tofu and miso, and that's hard. At least Mama is also teaching her about all the different kinds of red bean paste as well, so she gets to make sweets in between wrestling with soya bean curd. Just to emphasize how hard things have been this year, Taijima-sama escorts Hikaku to see Mama shortly after the first frosts and states that his nephew will require a coat in the spring. Actually, making the coat will have to wait until Hikaku has been fitted for armor. The coat needs to go over the top, but advance warning means Mama can acquire appropriate materials and plan a suitable pattern. Hikaku is Ninigi-sama's eldest after all, and Ninigi-sama was Taijima-sama's brother. Mama asks Kita about a pattern, because Mama knows Kita likes creating new patterns rather than just reproducing old ones, and that she has come up with several. Ninigi-sama died in the coat Mama had made for him to wear when he married. The coat was Susanoo turning Kusanadaheim back into a person after wearing her as a comb in his topknot while killing Yamato no Orochi. Ninigi-sama's previous coat, which Kita had learned patchwork from, had shown Tsukuyumi slaying Yukmachi and is a standard clan design belonging to the Amaterasu lineage. Younger sons in the Amaterasu lineage are allowed to wear Tsukuyumi, but as Izuna is wearing the hair of Inaba, which is a new design Kita helped with and not claimed by any lineage, it is appropriate to offer it to Hikaku. Provided he doesn't want a new design, of course, or a different Tsukuyumi. Madara's coat is a new design, and probably counts as a masterwork since Mama hasn't actually given her any new sewing lessons since she finished it. Taijima-sama's coat is a traditional design, Susanoo birthing 5 gods from Amaterasu's necklace, and he's been wearing it since he became clan head before Kita was even born. He did have another coat, one made for his wedding, but that one got completely destroyed in a Senju ambush during last year's war, and he doesn't seem interested in replacing it yet. Hikaku decides that he would like a coat like his father's first one, please. So Kita gets out the scroll with the pattern and starts talking about colors and metallic threads and prices as Mama watches silently over her tea. Taijima-sama watches attentively as Hikaku asks questions and chooses colors and bargains, face impassive but chakra approving. Hikaku is only 13, but Taijima-sama is probably thinking of preparing him to be one of Madara-sama's top subordinates alongside Izuna, so Hikaku showing that he can plan and ask good questions and make decisions that account for available resources is important for the clan. Of course, nobody cares that Kita is showing all those same skills. She's a girl and not a warrior, so it's less relevant, even though she's a year younger than Hikaku. Her choices only affect her household, not the whole clan. Once the haggling is over, Taijima agrees to the price and arranges for Kita to be paid a third of it in advance, so she can acquire suitable materials from the storehouses and have metallic thread made. That way, when Hikaku has been fitted for his armor, he can immediately have his measurements taken and she can start. His is not the only new coat she has been commissioned for this winter, but the others are all prints, so take less time, even though they are in some ways fiddlier. Lots of messing around with print blocks and rice starch paste and dye baths, which isn't much fun in the cold as everything takes longer to dry, even if it's sunny. She will likely end up doing most of those all together in the early spring, spending every waking hour at work. It's worth it though, to see the clan's shinobi walking around in coats she has made, with seals hidden in the lining to help protect them from harm. Mama will help, although she is spending much more time with little Jonan than Kita can remember her doing with any of her other sisters when they were babies. At least this year Tadashina has taken over spinning and weaving most of the hemp, so Kita only has to do as much as she needs for her own mending and seal stitching. Spring arrives but warmer weather does not. The frosts continue for weeks longer than usual, the rains come 2 months early and are frequently sleet, everybody is cold and wet, and there is mud everywhere. Sneezes and coughs become a common sound, and Yumioryoba runs so short on throat soothers that the warrior patrols around Uchiha lands dig up wild licorice when they can find it to bring home to her. Kita does not suffer worse than a mild fever for 2 days and a tickly throat. Her baby sisters and brother are similarly fortunate, as is her father, but Mama and Grandma are coughing and wheezing for weeks on end. Armed with undeniable proof that her immune-boosting seals are extremely effective, Kita offers her services to Yumiorioba to tend to bedridden clansmen, and is instantly snapped up. Taking her sewing with her, she makes tea and miso soup for feverish children and supports exhausted clanswomen, watching at bedsides so variously distant aunties in variously poor states of health can complete all the very necessary tasks that keep a household afloat. In between her own work of quilting printed coats and completing Hikaku's patchwork coat lining, she helps wash ko-sewed and underclothes and stitches her Sharingan-shaped seals under the collars of shirts and slips in a bid to speed recovery. Kita has no idea how much it actually helps, but nobody has died yet. Then one morning she is sent to sit in Ohabari-san's house. Hijiri, Hidaka and Benton are all sick along with their aunt, and Hikaku has been added to the patrol rota, wearing a borrowed coat to replace another ill person. Kita is healthy, a quality which is in short supply in the clan right now. The children know her and her current main project is for Hikaku, so he is unlikely to complain if it is a little late because she prioritized his siblings' health. Kita understands completely why Yumiorioba picked her. It is however nerve-wracking, because Ohabari-san's house is one of the finest in the clan. Well, it used to be Naniji-sama's house too, but Ohabari-san is the only adult living in it now, and everything in the house is of much higher quality than Kita is used to, right down to the dishes and the sheets. Grandma had talked about the main families of the clan's most prominent lineages having cotton sheets, but Kita hadn't quite grasped the implications before now. Imagine being able to just buy all your sheets. All the material for growing children's undershirts as well. The only cotton ko-sewed Kita owns is the one that came with the yukata set Auntie Tsuyu gave her. This creates a problem. Kita does not have any chakra-infused cotton thread. Well, not fine enough to darn undershirts with anyway. Her coat quilting thread is cotton, but it's sturdy, made of many finer strands twisted together. She ends up having to offer to do the laundry, which reveals the house's spools of thread used to assemble kimono, and has to put off everything until the following morning while a skein of thread from the spools sits on a hastily constructed seal intended to slowly spin her chakra into the cotton without damaging it. A home guard patrol like Hikaku is filling in on is not just a march around the perimeter of the clan lands. Each patrol is assigned to a specific area, where there's a hidden shelter with supplies and beds, and they stay in that area for up to a week at a time, keeping in contact with the patrols on either side several times a day. Kita is therefore going to be babysitting her sort of friend's younger siblings, and trying to look after Ohabari-san, who refuses to stay in bed despite her fever, for quite a long time. It doesn't take very long for Hijiri to start complaining about the miso soup, despite all the ginger Kita is adding to it to clear their heads. It doesn't help that he's not much more than a year younger than her. He vacillates between being grumpy that a girl has been put in charge of him and wanting his mother. Nakasama has been dead for over a year now. Kita sings songs, keeps the children hydrated, and manages to whisk Hidaka out onto the engawa in time for him to be sick over the edge on the ground outside rather than on the futon. She talks about the mostly finished patchwork she is making for their brother's new coat, tells them the story of Yukmachi and Tsukuyumi. Both boys find the idea of a goddess vomiting up food to be disgusting yet hilarious, and sits on the engawa as they nap in the middle of the day, Benton tied to her back and snuffling as Kita sews seal after seal into shirt collars. The white on white in the dim light from the overcast sky requiring far more concentration than her patchwork. She only has the metallic accents left now, and those are easily seen even in the late afternoon. Setting the last child-sized undershirt aside, Kita rolls her shoulders and stretches her neck, then almost jumps out of her skin. Taijima-sama is standing at the far end of the engawa where it turns the corner around the house, body still and chakra muffled but eyes Sharingan red with Tomos spinning lazily as he watches her. So you are the clan's mysterious sealing spirit, he muses, stepping closer. The Toyotama girl, how old are you? Kita is not surprised that Taijima-sama only knows her by her lineage. She is not exactly significant enough to the clan's governance and defense for him to consider her name important. My 12th birthday was in December, Taijima-sama, she murmurs, not daring to stand but tilting her face up so she can keep an eye on his hands. She has his knees strapped to her back. He is probably not going to hurt her. He nods, his chakra pulsing with a sudden burst of satisfaction. I will talk to your parents. He turns and walks away back around the corner of the building, leaving Kita behind with her hands shaking in the aftermath of the adrenaline rush as she struggles to breathe evenly. What is going to happen to her now? Madara is one of maybe 40 people in the entire clan who has barely been ill at all, so he is arranging patrol routes and making sure everybody assigned to patrols is in good enough health to complete them. This weather has been miserable for everybody, so the Senju are staying inside their own borders as much as the Uchiha are, and what few missions the clan has been offered have been mainly to do with rescuing people and livestock from floodwaters. Madara had not realized until those missions started coming in that walking on water is a skill with civilian applications that customers are willing to pay for. It's something he's sure his father will have made a note of, if it hasn't happened before already. Easy missions mean easy money, for all that the weather that brings in such missions carries with it all kinds of associated problems. The weather really is utterly abysmal. If it continues like this, it will affect the rice planting by washing away the seedlings, which means in turn that the clan is likely to be hired for another trade war next year, as retaliation for the coming autumn's inevitable rise in prices and reduced availability. Madara is already not looking forward to it. They still haven't fully replenished the outguard strength from the proxy war between Tea and Fire the year before last. True, the Senju aren't likely to have recovered either, but that doesn't make things better. It doesn't put the Uchiha in a better place overall. It just means that the Senju are in as desperate straits as his clan is, so are just as likely to jump at the money being offered despite the projected losses. Having more money. Someone knocks against the shoji separating the document room from the clan house's formal reception room, then slides it open. Madara, father's called a meeting, you need to make tea. Madara carefully rolls up the scrolls detailing the clan's recent finances and stores and slides them back into their respective places on the shelves. Have you put the kettle over the fire? Izuna huffs. Of course I did. I got out the good tea too, not the matcha. It's just an in-clan meeting with some of the elders of the most prominent lineages, but you'll have to brew it and serve it since I'm not invited. Madara will also have to dress appropriately for such a meeting. His father insists on it, as formality engenders appropriate respect. Watch the kettle while I change. His little brother shouts, brush your hair. After him as he hurries off to their bedroom to remove his armor and trousers and find his hakama. His usual coat is an all-purpose garment, so he can wear it indoors over formal wear. It is certainly cold enough that everybody else will be wearing their coats as well, his father included. It's a very small meeting, likely because most of the people who should be here are too sick to leave their houses. There's Great-Uncle Moreya, the only living elder of the Amaterasu lineage, Great-Aunt Tamiyori representing the Yatagarasu lineage, Kashima of the Raiden lineage and Akaishi, Madara's father's right hand who has no known lineage at all. Of course Madara's father is also present as the outguard head, but usually in these meetings there are two people present from the main family of each of the clan's documented lineages and a pair of elders representing clan members with no known lineage. This is just 3 lines out of 8, each with a single representative, not even a quarter of a council and nowhere near enough people to make any meaningful decisions for the entire clan. Madara serves tea and does not comment. He will ask any questions he still has at the end of this meeting later, and in private. What's this about then, Taijima-sama? Elder Moreya grumbles after drinking his tea, coughing wetly into a handkerchief. Father smiles. I have located the clan's mysterious sealing spirit, he says lightly, evidently relishing his triumph. The brief outcry from the elders is to be expected. The business with the unknown seals popping up has been going on for nearly 3 years now, and there have never been any leads, which is why the matter has been kept strictly confidential until now. For his father to have found the perpetrator is proof of his fitness for leadership and will force those elders who use this to question his authority to back down. Who is it then? Elder Kashima demands testily. Somebody's supposedly civilian husband? One of Sanasawa's students playing with forces beyond their control? Minami's daughter, the new Toyotama coat maker, father replies smugly. I caught her stitching seals into my nephew's undershirts. Madara nearly drops his tea. He knows who his father is talking about. She made his new coat and is making one for Hikaku to wear this year. Her name, he can't remember her name. His father's never spoken it, and she's never introduced herself with it. He knows what she looks like though, can see her in his mind with a craftsperson's apron over a red kimono, her braid dangling down her back, and he's sure that she's younger than Izuna. Fushimi's granddaughter, little Kita? Elder Tamiyori says into the shocked silence. Taijima, she's 12. Are you saying we were all outwitted by a child? I have spoken to her parents and examined their home, the outguard head says steadily. Many seals are in evidence on their children's clothing, matching those woven into the bandages we took on campaign, and the script on her embroidery patterns is from the same hand as the seals painted under every roof of the clan compound. There are seals under their hearthstones, seals under the edge of their wooden floor, and many, many more seals stitched into the linings of the coats piled up in her work basket. Ikoma assures me that his daughter has never left clan grounds, has never met anybody out-clan, and admitted that he was aware of her deftness and precision in using her chakra despite her mediocre reserves. Madara is reluctantly impressed. Both with the girl for hiding this for so long, and with his father for admitting they have spent 3 years running around looking for a civilian girl who makes clothes and probably didn't even realize they were looking for her. He takes a mouthful of tea to hide his amusement at the elder's expressions. I have negotiated with her parents and arranged her betrothal to my eldest son, his father continues. Madara almost chokes. She will immediately move in with my sister, who will instruct her as appropriate for a future head of home guard and wife to someone of my son's station. The wedding will take place after her coming of age. Madara does some desperate mental arithmetic, determines that he has 8 years to get to know his betrothed before he is expected to marry her, and breathes a quiet sigh of relief. The usual caveats are in place, his father continues, indicating that if either he or her, Kita, Elder Tamayori said her name is Kita, falls desperately in love with somebody else, the contract will be dissolved with appropriate compensation made by the party dissolving it, and with her and her family's needs provided for, she will be better positioned to supply the whole clan. In other words, his father had acted immediately to gain control over the unexpected sealing specialist, succeeded, and now access to seals depends on people's personal allegiance to him rather than on being able to afford her services or cajoling her into helping them. It's a heavy-handed and not at all subtle means to expand and affirm his power and influence after the elders have used this whole debacle to undermine him over the past few years. Madara's not sure how he would do otherwise in his father's place though. Possibly inform his theoretical son beforehand so he didn't choke on his tea in public at the news. How did she get missed? Elder Moreya demands, coughing again. I know we spoke to Kamami as well as Sanasawa. If Kita has such a steady hand and quick mind as to pursue sealing, she should have been mentioned when this was investigated the first time. Kamami-san and Sanasawa-sensei teach the clan's children to read and write, Kamami-san the girls and Sanasawa-sensei the boys. At home Kita prefers to write with her left hand, Kamami does not permit such in her schoolroom. Madara pulls a face, he isn't the only one. A left-handed shinobi has the advantage of surprise over his enemy, so what's wrong with using the left hand to write with as well? This is clearly something that needs addressing, as without Kamami-san's prejudice this mystery would have been solved much sooner. Your son's betrothal is a family matter and not subject to the approval of the wider clan, Kashima says sourly, setting his empty teacup down on the table. My congratulations on your most advantageous alliance, Taijima-sama, Madara-kun. Thank you, Elder, Madara manages, bowing his head politely. The meeting ends shortly thereafter, much to his relief. He had not been expecting a betrothal, especially not to a girl 3 years younger than he is. He's never had a conversation with Kita-san, but he will definitely have to try. His father has gone to a lot of effort to arrange this, and if he doesn't get along with her, it will probably be arranged for her to marry Izuna instead. His father will not want her outside the authority of their immediate family. She seemed polite and agreeable at his coat fittings, and he heard her mother say to his father that the design was an original one, which means that nobody else in the entire history of the clan has ever had a coat like his. Leaving his father, Madara dashes back to his room so he can take the coat off and have another look at the patchwork lining. Father always says you can tell a lot about a person by their achievements. Izuna is of course waiting for him in the hall and has definitely been eavesdropping. You're getting married, Madara? Not yet, he hisses, hurrying into the bedroom. Izuna closes the shoji behind them and watches as Madara strips out of his coat, turning the sleeves inside out. Kneeling on the lower back is Izanagi, washing his face in the river with his clothes and accessories strewn behind him across the lower third of the right front panel. Springing from the water streaming from his eyes and nose are Amaterasu, Tsukuyumi and Susanoo, Amaterasu in the middle of the back, Susanoo on the right panel and Tsukuyumi on the left panel. The river edge wanders diagonally from middle of the back hem to middle left, then down the left sleeve with the moon and stars glittering above it. The right sleeve is full of swirling storm clouds, complete with little flashes of lightning. If he turns the coat completely inside out, the sun and moon will be on the backs of his shoulders and Susanoo's head will be over his heart. It's beautiful. Madara has already admired it, multiple times, honestly, but now he's thinking about what kind of person sees this in their head, then manages to draw it out on paper well enough for it to count as art. Has the patience to sew it with such tiny stitches. Kita doesn't even have a Sharingan, father would have said so, and she made this? All this effort and care in something he's regularly getting mud, blood and who knows what else on? How many times has he almost set his sleeve cuffs on fire now? He needs to take better care of his coat. Who are you marrying? His brother is relentless. It's not for 8 years, Izuna, we've got to both be old enough first. And it's the girl who made our coats. Father found out she was drawing the seals all over the compound. Izuna glares. Seriously? She doesn't even have Sharingan. Who teaches a civilian girl about seals anyway? She's self-taught. Izuna blinks and his entire attitude changes. Oh, so she's a genius? What, it's true! He protests at Madara's dumbfounded expression. Father's been trying to find out who was behind this for years. Kita-chan's younger than me, she must have been 8 or something when she started. Not even your precious Hashirama's that good. Hashirama's not my anything. Wait a minute. Izuna, how do you know her name? His little brother huffs. She was Yahiko's friend, he says shortly, and Hikaka knows her. She was there when Toku-chan died and screamed loud enough that father and uncle arrived in time to save Hijiri when the Senju raided us. Madara hadn't realized that Kita is the same age as Yahiko would be now. It hurts, in his memories that are not Sharingan sharp, so he is doomed to lose them completely. Yahiko is 7 and will be 7 forever. She saved Hijiri? Izuna nods. Hikaka says she gave him that Yatagarasu blanket for Benton too, when everybody else was expecting her to die. Hey, do you think she put seals in the blanket? Ohabrioba was really surprised that Benton lived through the winter. Madara likes the idea of a girl who will give seals to a premature orphan baby to help them survive and never say a word about it. It implies that Kita actually cares about the clan, not just about her standing in it or in having her efforts recognized by it. That places her above quite a lot of his closer relatives. We'll have to ask her. Father said she was moving into Ohabrioba's house. At least she's young enough to not behave strangely about the whole betrothal thing. Hopefully. Today? Probably not today, Madara concedes. Or tomorrow either. Everybody's still sick. Kita-chan isn't sick, Izuna notes perceptively. And we're not sick. Do you think she stitched seals on our clothes too? She made your undershirts, didn't she? I saw her mending father's once. That is something else he will have to check right now. Seals are hard to recognize because they have no external chakra, but the Sharingan reveals even the tiniest of details, and now Madara knows that Kita's seals are stitched. He knows what to look for. Let's find out. Kita is 12. Kita doesn't want to move away from her parents. Kita recognizes that in this matter she does not have a choice. Kita puts on a brave face for her little sisters, who are all incredibly excited that she is betrothed to Madara-sama like the girls in her fairy stories, who work hard and do good things and get noticed by rulers. Grandma watches her knowingly, pats her hands and promises to visit in the autumn to help her with her silk. Papa hugs her and tells her how Taijima-sama has given them an entire extra field, which means Mama can expand the vegetable garden again and possibly plant a few more mulberry trees, so that when Tadashina is older she can weave silk as well as hemp. Auntie Tsuyu will also be able to make more paper as Mama plans to plant more hemp, and paper is something that is useful to the clan and sells well. They may even buy paper mulberry saplings, so the clan can start making its own washi. Mama takes Kita aside into hers and Papa's room, opens her wardrobe and shows Kita her kimono. There's the pine green one with the wavy gold bamboo print that Mama is wearing already and the pale blue one with the big white sakura print that Mama only wears in spring. Then there's a kimono Kita has never seen Mama wear. It is a light, vivid green like new shoots painted with delicately swirling purple wisteria blossom and darker green leaves arching across the body and up the back, with additional smaller sprays hanging down the sleeves, all curving and flowing as though blown by the wind. Mama, it's beautiful. It belonged to Grandma's mother. She was more highly placed in our lineage than we are, Mama explains. Grandfather, my grandfather, bought it when he was courting her. She carefully lifts it out, showing Kita the peach blossom pink nagajuban that goes with it, soft cotton printed with a scattering of vibrantly blue butterflies, and the undershirt and slip in pale, purple-tinged blue. The next kimono is familiar and very clearly made by Grandma. It is woven in deep and pale pink, with a magnificent and very complicated pattern which combines clouds with rippling water and clematis vines. I wore this all the time after I married, right up until you were born. I stopped wearing it because I didn't want to ruin it, so it's just for festivals now. Mama only wears it a few times a year, but she always looks beautiful in it. Will you wear it every day once Jonin is older? Maybe. That kimono goes away again and Mama takes out a different one. This one is in pale iris purple, with a detailed but subtle pattern of plum blossom and birds. Grandma made this one too. It's very pretty. It is. Not many people wear purple. Purple is very hard to dye consistently as it's usually made by dyeing red over indigo or vice versa, but this particular shade comes from water iris stems, so it takes a lot of work to gather enough to dye an entire kimono. Even in a pale tint. Grandma made it as a gift for her mother. It's yours now. You will need a silk kimono to wear on special occasions, as you are representing our lineage to the clan head. We are giving you the wisteria kimono as well. I have a cream and gold obi Grandma made that you can wear with both. Mama? When you are more settled you can buy yourself a plain obi and embroider it any way you wish, Mama tells her quietly, pulling out a deep charcoal nagajuban with a plain collar, the body printed with green-gray bamboo stalks and rosy-orange crickets. You are going to be the clan head's wife, so once you are married you will wear the kimono of the Amaterasu lineage. Your spinning is fine enough that you can make yourself a plain obi of wild silk, or even a whole kimono if you wish, although it will be impossible to paint on so you will have to limit yourself to embroidery. I expect you to keep your cotton kimono for every day for the time being, then a plain or printed silk kimono once you begin to be comfortable in your new role. One made from spun silk is less formal than one from reeled silk. The woven kimono is for informal gatherings, tea ceremonies and festivals. The painted kimono for formal occasions where you must stand before outsiders as the clan heir's betrothed. You may well be given other kimonos for such occasions, Mama adds, but these are part of your dowry. As will be your great-grandmother's Toada Makuro tombstone and matching accessories, which you are not to try on until after you are married. I promise, Mama. Kita sniffs. She is trying not to cry, but it is hard. Hush, my little winter's child, you're not going so far away. You will see all of us around the compound and nobody will keep you from visiting. But I won't be able to come home anymore. Mama hugs her and lets her cry into her kimono. You will have a new home, North Star, she croons, stroking Kita's hair, and you are such a strong, clever girl to have caught Taijima-sama's eye. He came to us to ask for you, despite you being so young in our place in the clan lowly, and he wants you for his firstborn. This is your opportunity, a way you have made for yourself. Don't hesitate. Kita wipes her eyes on her apron and tries to settle. I'll work hard, Mama. I know you will, North Star. Mama smiles at her. The gods have blessed me with such a dutiful and thoughtful firstborn. Kita giggles. Thank you, Mama. This is going to be very hard, but she can do it. Even though she's never had a proper conversation with Madara before and is going to be buried under new kinds of lessons she doesn't even want for several years. And don't think this will get you out of making coats, Mama mock scolds her. You have the eye for it, and Naka is much less attentive than you were at 6, so she will not be nearly good enough to take over for at least 8 years. Our quilted coats are a jewel of the clan and you have far too much talent there to squander. I will be sending you off with all my scraps and threads and designs. But Mama! Naka is not you. She will take better to learning to dye and paint and quilt first, and those skills will serve her better in helping me make and maintain the coats of the wider clan. It will also give Tadashina the opportunity to work with silk, which she has earned, and give me time to nurture some new saplings so I can breed enough silkworms for both weaving and patchworking in a year or two. Barring unexpected disaster, it will be years before any new patchwork coats need to be made, and by then I will have replenished my scrap bag. The designs are better off kept safe with you. I have always fretted about them, what with this house not being as fine as my grandmother's was. If I ever need one, I know where to find you. Kita realizes this is Mama giving herself excuses to visit and stops protesting. Things will be different, but that doesn't mean they will be bad. Just because her whole world has been upended does not mean Kita is getting out of looking after Hikaku's younger siblings and Ohabari-san. So after kissing her own siblings goodnight and agreeing with Mama that it's best not to move her trays full of caterpillar eggs until the rain stops, she heads back to Ohabari-san's house to watch over Hijiri, Hidaka and Benton for the night. This time, however, she takes her bag of sealing notes and practice scraps. If people know, she can switch between sewing Hikaku's coat and trying out new seal ideas. The rain is lighter now, barely more than a drizzle, but no less wet, so she makes sure to wear her hat and her own coat. It's not a proper warrior coat, double quilted with a heavy cotton outer layer and a coarse canvas core, but it's still warm and keeps her dry. A hydrophobic seal would be a good idea. Something to make water roll off the outer layer of the coat rather than soaking into it. Well, would be a good idea for a rain cover. A coat you can't get wet would be a very bad idea in battle when people are throwing fire around. Even with fire-retarding seals, no Uchiha would ever be foolish enough to oil or wax their coat. Also, how would she ever be able to wash it? Arriving at Ohabari-san's house, Kita takes off her shoes, hangs up her hat and coat to dry in the genkan and makes her own way inside, stopping dead after opening the shoji that separates the front hall from the main reception room. Kita-san. Come in and sit down, Taijima-sama invites, inclining his head towards the side of the table closest to her, Tomo spinning gently black on scarlet in his eyes. He is sitting beside Ohabari-san, his second to his right and Grandpa Yamasachi on Ohabari-san's left, all four of them watching her over their tea. Grandpa Yamasachi is the head of the Toyama lineage that Kita belongs to and insists on everybody in the lineage calling him Grandpa, despite Kita being rather distantly related to him. She thinks he is Grandma's cousin or second cousin maybe. Kita closes the shoji behind her and shuffles up to the table, carefully seating herself size as appropriate for such a formal occasion, taking off her apron and setting it down beside her under her bag. Yamasachi-ji-san, she says, addressing her lineage's elder first as protocol demands, Taijima-sama, Ohabari-san. Sir, she adds, glancing at the man whose name she does not know. We need to discuss your sealing, Kita-chan, Grandpa Yamasachi tells her firmly but not unkindly. Taijima-sama knows your parents were unaware of your experiments, so they will not be censured for allowing you to pursue such a dangerous art unsupervised, but you must provide the clan with a list of all the seals you have created, their function, how rigorously you have tested them, and where you have placed them. I was made aware of sealing placed on clan buildings 3 summers ago, when Akaishi, Taijima-sama gestures towards his second, witnessed a lightning strike on the clan hall that revealed a seal channeling the strike into the ground, leaving the roof intact. His discovery led to closer inspections of other clan buildings, revealing many more seals but a limited range of designs. Akaishi reaches down to the floor beside him and produces a stack of sketches, laying them out on the table. Over time, more seals were discovered. Recognizing her cue, Kita leans forwards and gingerly spreads the drawings out. The top sketch is a very dramatic rendition of the instant a lightning bolt hit the Suzumotori on the clan hall, sizzling energy clearly visible snaking along the grounding line around the edge of the roof and down a corner pillar to the ground. This is a grounding seal, she murmurs as Ohabari-san pours a cup of tea and places it in front of her. It has 2 parts, the head, which is painted in a high place to attract lighting, and the tail which connects the head to the ground so that the lightning can be discharged harmlessly. The lightning is attracted to the head, rather than striking another part of the building likely to be damaged. The seal creates an area around the object it is placed on where lighting cannot do damage, so that whatever the head seal is attached to doesn't catch on fire. She reaches out for the edge of the teacup, fingers grazing it nervously. I have painted the seal on every Suzumotori in the clan compound. Taijima-sama does not give away in either body or chakra whether or not this is a surprise to him. Akaishi takes notes as she speaks, occasionally scribbling diagrams that have the same shape as some of her gestures and illustrate her words. The next sketch is of her umbrella seal. Kita sips her tea, really fine sencha, possibly even a first picking, then explains that 1 2, followed by the fire prevention seals, fire dampening seals, anti-vermin seals and the seals against decay and physical damage. She explains how the decay prevention seals can interfere with the pickling and fermentation process, so have a very limited effective range and need to be applied directly onto containers of fresh foods rather than on entire buildings. The seals on the buildings are to prevent the wood itself rotting. She finishes her tea. Ohabari-sama pours new tea for everybody as Akaishi gathers up the sketches and changes scrolls. What about these seals? Taijima-sama asks, laying a roll of bandage and one of Madara-sama's undershirts on the table. Kita starts with the bandage. The Sharingan eye seal strengthens the body by proximity, improving its ability to recognize infection and fight it off. It encourages the immune system to be like the Sharingan, alert and attentive to all possible threats in order to swiftly counter them. The skull and crossed bones is a sterilization seal, to reduce the possibility of infection developing at all. Both of them draw on ambient chakra, so they're not very powerful and do run out after a while, but they can draw more chakra in and start working again if they are left in use for a little while. The integrity seal is meant to draw on the body's memory of its condition before the injury, to encourage everything to heal in its proper alignment and reduce scarring. I don't know how well that one works as I couldn't test it. Taijima-sama turns back the collar of the undershirt, revealing where somebody has smeared ash to make the seal stitching stand out. Washing that off is going to be really irritating. She hopes she's not expected to do it. There are glands in the throat which swell when a person is fighting an infection, she explains, one hand rising to her own throat. I felt that putting the Sharingan seals close to those glands was a good compromise, as they are discreet yet reasonably close to both the mouth and nose. Many illnesses are contracted through breathing. She opens the undershirt, revealing another ashy seal stitched into the armpit. The sterilization seal also prevents bad smells developing, she admits with as much aplomb as she can manage. I heard all kinds of complaints about moldy clothing and persistent smells after the last campaign. Akaishi hastily sips his tea to disguise his smirk and Taijima-sama's chakra sparkles with amusement despite his stony face and intent gaze. Also, the Sharingan seals might not be good for pregnant women, Kita adds scrupulously, since it might encourage their body to attack and miscarry the unborn child. I didn't put any on my mother's clothes. A wise precaution, Grandpa Yamasachi assures her gravely. You have shown appropriate caution and been admirably responsible, although you properly should have approached myself or Fuji-san before even attempting a seal. They can be extremely dangerous. However, as it has been determined that you were never actually taught that, his tone sharpens abruptly, you will not be punished for your ignorance, but only because nobody has been harmed by it. Kita bows. Thank you, Grandpa Yamasachi. Are there any other seals you have made? Taijima-sama asks mildly. Kita can't tell if he's found more seals he wants her to confess to or if he's admitting he doesn't think he's found them all. Best not to risk it. Getting in trouble for lying would be very stupid right now. I stitched a lot of seals into the canvas lining of Madara-sama and Izuna-sama's coats, she admits, and into other people's coats as well. I have a calming seal. It's not very strong, but it helps a person think through anger. A seal to sharpen reflexes that mostly works when a person is tired, so it's more of a reflex maintenance seal than actually improving them. A seal that improves dexterity. I don't know how that one works, but I haven't dropped anything since stitching it into my sleeve cuffs, and a seal that reduces nightmares. How can a seal reduce nightmares? Akaishi asks, abruptly interested. What makes dreams scary isn't what you see in them, it's how you feel in them, Kita explains cautiously. I've had scary dreams where nothing actually happened and dreams where really terrible things happened but it wasn't scary. So the seal sort of dampens painful emotions while you're sleeping, so you don't feel scared or angry while dreaming. That one definitely works, she adds. I tested it on myself a lot before stitching it anywhere else. She sips her tea as Akaishi and Taijima-sama exchange significant glances. She's not sure what that is about. There's another seal, she goes on. I put it in Izuna-sama's first coat, along with the fire-dampening seal, and in Madara-sama's coats later. It's a strengthening seal. It works on the coat itself, binding the fibers in each individual thread together so they are less likely to break. I mean, it's probably not going to stop a sword, but it could cushion a glancing blow, maybe? I know it works at least a bit because I tested it with Mama's kitchen knives. A very useful seal, Taijima-sama agrees. The spinning tomo in his eyes make being the focus of his attention even more intimidating than usual. Could you teach others to apply these seals, Kita-chan? Maybe? She prevaricates. My seals make sense to me, but if they don't make sense to other people then they might not be able to get them to work. And my stitch seals are only stitched, so the person I was teaching would have to learn to embroider too. Stitching seals is completely different to writing them, as you have to hold the entire seal in your mind until it's finished. Because thread is continuous, but an ink seal is written in separate strokes and only comes together at the end when it's activated. Something to revisit later, Taijima-sama decides, setting his teacup down on the table. For the time being you will continue to apply and maintain these seals in bandages and on the coats of the clan, and keep written notes of other seals you are developing. Once you have a new seal, you will approach Akaishi if it has a martial application or Yamasachi-san if it is a civilian seal, and they will supervise the testing process. Should the seal pass testing, it will be submitted to myself for approval. From now on you are only to apply approved seals to clan structures and materials. Your current seals, save the integrity seal, are all approved. Yamasachi-san will speak to Yumiori-san about testing that one on volunteers or animals, so we can be certain of its effects. You are to unravel every instance of that seal from the clan's bandage supply as punishment for your carelessness. Yes, Taijima-sama. Kita bows. He is right, she was incredibly thoughtless there. She should have known better. Ohabari will teach you what you need to know to become a good wife to my son and a proper head of the home guard, Taijima concludes, Sharingan fading from his eyes as he rises from the table. Given the intelligence and skills you have already shown, I do not believe it will take you very long to learn. Then he leaves, Akaishi right behind him with an armful of papers and the soiled undershirt. At least they aren't making her wash it. That went tolerably well, all things considered, Grandpa Yamasachi says dryly after the front door closes. Have another cup of tea, Kita-chan. Taijima's attention is not good for the nerves. Kita accepts more tea. Something about both Grandpa's and Ohabari-san's non-reaction to Taijima-sama's statement that she will be home head is making her uneasy. Grandpa? Yes, Kita-chan? I thought being head of the home guard was a position reserved for a member of the Amaterasu lineage. I mean, that's what Grandma taught me. Surely Ohabari-san should be head of the home guard, being the most senior member of the Amaterasu lineage after Taijima-sama? When Taijima-sama became head of the Out Guard, he insisted that his wife Hitomi become home guard head, Ohabari-san replies mildly. Since her death the clan has not had an official home head, as Taijima deemed it unnecessary. My brother Ninigi took on some of the responsibilities for a time, but he too is dead now. The way Ohabari-san says that has really uncomfortable implications, considering Ninigi-sama died right at the end of the proxy war between fire and tea. I don't feel qualified to be home head, Kita attempts. I wasn't raised in my lineage's main family, so do not know the people or have any concept of the pressures involved. Yes, I am likely to become Madara-sama's wife, but that is in itself a full-time position. I do not wish to neglect my duties to him. I also have my ceiling, which requires me to consider the needs of the clan as a whole, home guard and out guard. She hesitates. It would be inappropriate of me to take on more responsibilities than I am capable of devoting my attention to. A most wise observation for one so young, Ohabari-san muses into her tea. Of course, it is only proper that I know about the home guard and its inner workings, since Madara-sama is likely to succeed his father as out guard head at some point, and will need a neutral perspective, Kita continues, feeling slightly surer of her footing in this very perilous conversation now, so I have no objections whatsoever towards learning whatever you can teach me about the clan, Ohabari-san. Hopefully her implications there are sufficiently clear. Call me auntie. You are marrying my nephew after all, Ohabari-san says, fondness infusing her tone ever so slightly. I agree that you will need a very thorough education on the clan to be a good wife to the future head of the Outguard, and that your ceilings should of course take precedence over any additional responsibilities that might be offered to you. Once everybody's health has improved and the weather is better, I will begin introducing you to the relevant individuals and provide you with suitable context. As will I and your Granny Fuji, Kita-chan, Grandpa Yamasachi adds tone arch. Having multiple perspectives on past political upsets is very important to achieving a full understanding of events. Ohabrioba snorts. Clearly they know each other very well to tease like that. Finish your tea, Kita-chan, then go and sit with the little ones, Ohabrioba concludes, producing a handkerchief from her sleeve and coughing into it. I will be turning in shortly as well. I will speak to Yumiori about the bandages in the morning. Shall I make breakfast in the morning, Auntie? I would be most grateful, Kita-chan. Kita spends the next 2 days unpicking seals from the clan's bandage stock and explaining seriously to Hijiri and Hidaka that she did something she shouldn't have, but that since nobody had said she shouldn't have and nobody got hurt by her mistake, she just has to undo what she did rather than being punished. Both boys accept this explanation as logical and ignore her thereafter. They're both much better but still very tired, so spend most of both days sleeping and eating. Kita makes sure to cover them up again when they throw their blankets off. The fever might make them think that they're hot, but if they chilled now, that could get very dangerous for them. Uchiha are not as vulnerable to high temperatures as regular civilians, being a clan fire nature due to chakra affinity, so fevers are less dangerous. Exposure, however, is a real killer, so keeping everybody warm is essential. Active chakra circulation helps there. It means she can sit still on the endowa wearing 2 layers of padded undergarments under her kimono and her coat, and not be cold despite the freezing rain bucketing down within arm's reach. The shoji behind her is open a crack to allow for air circulation, but the boys are buried under 6 layers of blankets on the futon inside, and Benton is strapped to Kita's back between her padded layers. She looks ridiculous, but the toddler is warm and that's what matters. The next day she has to cook a more substantial breakfast for ravenous recovering boys who run around the entire house, their enthusiasm and energy punctuated by hacking bass coughs that Ohabrioba finds very alarming indeed. So after breakfast Kita dresses then in all the warm layers she can find, adds coats on top and lets them loose in the garden. The rain's not very heavy at the moment, and they clearly need the exercise. Neither Hijiri nor Hidaka falls into the koi pond inside the first 5 minutes, but it is a very near thing. Kita watches then from the endowa, busily stitching the silver-wrapped thread in lines emerging from the moon above Tsukuyomi's head and lightly reflecting off his bloodied sword. More silver accents will be added to the dismembered goddess lying at his feet. Hikaku had argued for silver only, which meant objectively more metallic thread overall, and Taijima-sama had liked because this way only he and his sons have gold thread embroidery in their coats. Well, sooner or later some other lineage's heir is probably going to want a coat, but they won't have the main pantheon on theirs. That is for the Amaterasu lineage only. She senses Madara-sama's arrival before he even takes his shoes off in the Genkin. Unlike his father, his chakra presence is neither quiet nor subtle. Good morning, Madara-sama, she says as he steps into the room behind her. The sudden scrape of the tatami against the floor under his feet suggests she has surprised him. You're a censor? And that is not Madara-sama. Izuna is evidently much more subtle, in chakra terms at least. Kita half-turns so as to look at her guests without losing track of the boys. Only barely, Izuna-sama. Your father snuck up on me very effectively a few days ago. Your brother, however, has very loud chakra. Loud? Madara-sama asks, walking past her through the open shoji and carefully settling himself on the endowa, his chakra swamping the area around her like a faintly sizzling cloud and obscuring her senses. He is wearing his coat reversed, showing off her patchwork. Kita hums. Maybe looming is a better word, she muses, daring to tease a little. Like a thundercloud, visible from a considerable distance and exerting pressure all around you. Izuna falls over laughing on the tatami. It's like she knows you, brother. Madara-sama reddens, glaring daggers at his brother before his gaze slides back to hers. My father's chakra is quiet? Kita pauses in her embroidery. Taijima-sama is very contained, she explains. He keeps most of his emotions and motives hidden within himself, where they can only be guessed at, and when he wishes to pass unnoticed he obscures his chakra entirely, sliding behind the background hum of the wider world. Madara-sama is highly expressive, everything is visible and external and written very large. My brother lacks subtlety, Izuna agrees cheerfully, and drop the sama, Kita-chan, you're going to marry him, you can definitely be personal with both of us. Madara shuffles, radiating acute embarrassment like sunlight through mist, but echoes, I would prefer it, Kita-san. Madara-kun then. This is a very confusing conversation on multiple levels. You may also be more personal if you wish, Madara-kun? Thank you, Kita-chan. The gangling 15-year-old hesitates, the chakra billowing around him undirected and hesitant. Do you think I could learn to be quieter? With my chakra, I mean? It's your chakra, so yes, Kita agrees candidly. Your reserves must be gigantic, for you to be able to bleed it all over the place like that and not notice. He's a huge great lump, Izuna confirms wickedly, leaning over Kita's shoulder to peer at her embroidery. Hey, is that Tsukuyumi? Yes, having just killed Yukamachi, Kita confirms. Hikaka wanted the same pattern as Ninigi-sama had before he married. That causes a sudden lull in conversation. Considering what Ohaburioba implied after the meeting with Taijima-sama, Kita can't admit to being surprised. It also makes it clear that whatever happened, these two saw it. So, any ideas on how I could make my chakra quieter? Madara asks after the awkward pause has stretched for several seconds too many. Well, two ways, Kita admits. This is something she's thought about a lot, since different people are more or less expressive, and it's not entirely dependent on chakra levels. Firstly, you could make an effort to keep your chakra under your skin rather than flaring all over the place. Secondly, you could learn to separate your emotions from your chakra, so you don't project everywhere all the time. Those are two different things? Well, yes. You could flare your chakra without projecting through it, probably. If you did that, it would just feel like your affinity. But if you can separate your emotions from your chakra, you can glare holes in the back of somebody's head without them realizing you're doing it. Is that why you learned? Izuna asks, all solicitous interest. Eileen, because once you can keep your feelings out of your chakra, you can deliberately imbue your chakra with a very specific feeling or intent, Kita explains, side-eyeing him warily, which is a necessary part of my stitched seals. If I'm not completely focused when making them, they fizzle out. Izuna feels like he's fishing for something. Izuna looks even keener. If I learned to do that, could I make seals out of wire? Probably. I mean, I've made seals out of wire. Mostly to see if it worked like thread. It's actually easier. Uchiha made steel wire conducts chakra very well indeed. Izuna looks gleeful. Madara mostly looks, and feels, confused. There is confusion billowing everywhere. How do I do that? Meditation helps? Kita offered a little helplessly. I mean, I mostly just do it, so I'm not sure how to teach it. Does the clan have stealth specialists? It sounds like something they should know how to do. I mean, it's not about ignoring your feelings. It's just about recognizing that they are not necessarily relevant to what you are doing right now. Madara still looks confused. Izuna is frowning like her words only partly make sense. Okay, say you go on a mission and people die, Kita attempts, and then you come home feeling terrible about it. But it's not anybody else's fault that you feel terrible, so you pull the feeling under your skin so they can't see it. You help your fellow shinobi to the surgery, because that's the right thing to do. You offer to carry a sack of rice for a passing granny because it needs doing and she shouldn't be made to feel bad because you messed up. Then when you're in private with somebody you trust, you let all those feelings out but keep your chakra contained, because emotions are messy and that's fine, but putting chakra behind them makes them invasive and that's not a good thing to do to people weaker than you are, who can't defend themselves from you. The lights come on. Both Madara and Izuna look like she has just kicked their whole world off kilter. Does keeping your own emotions and make it easier to wall other people's out? Izuna demands, actually looking at her properly for the first time. Kita feels vaguely exposed by that sharp gaze. Yes? I mean, once you get used to keeping yours in, you can tell when it's somebody else's feelings being pushed in your face, so they're easier to disregard. It also gets easier to tell if people are being manipulative on purpose. Izuna turns on his older brother. We are learning this, he says firmly. Madara is projecting a mess of pain, doubt, determination, and the particular delight that comes from learning a new thing. Meditation helps, you said? Meditation is a tool for increasing your familiarity with your own chakra, Kita recites, quoting one of the scrolls that Kamami-san has made her copy dozens of times in an attempt to improve her right-handed calligraphy. It has only been marginally successful. Kita is not ambidextrous and doubts she ever will be. Once you are familiar with your chakra, how it moves and circulates within you, how it responds to your moods and your will, you can mold it more effectively. This is how you got good at sealing, isn't it? Izuna points out shrewdly. You don't have much chakra, but you know it very well, so you can do a lot more with it than most people who aren't shinobi. That is part of it, yes? Izuna's eyes take on a slightly wicked gleam. Could we practice with you? Not all the time, of course, but regularly? So you can demonstrate how it's supposed to be done, and we can gauge our progress? He most certainly has an ulterior motive, but Kita can't quite pin it down. It's something more than an excuse to keep visiting, but beyond that she has no idea. I see no reason why not, so long as my other duties aren't interrupted. I'll sort it out with Auntie, Izuna assures her sincerely, mischief still gleaming in his eyes. Can you get us started now? This is a trap. However, she has a feeling the trap is for Madara, not for her, which explains Izuna's mischief far better. Far be it from Kita to thwart good-natured sibling teasing. Well, the best way to start is to sit comfortably in a position you can keep indefinitely without developing pins and needles. Both boys settle cross-legged on the engawa. Rest your hands on your thighs or your knees, whichever is most comfortable, then close your eyes and focus on the feel of your chakra inside yourself. They both settle. What do we do once we've found it? Izuna asks, eyes closed. Sink into the feeling. Does it move? If so, how? Is it steady or erratic? Where can you feel it most? It is in a specific area of your body? How does that feeling compare with other areas of yourself? Kita asks, tone soft and steady as she glances out at the garden again. Hijiri and Hidaka are busily crawling through the muddy shrubbery, playing ninja. Breathe slowly and explore the sense of your chakra. Madara's billowing cloud almost immediately contracts around him, trailing edges lingering on her throat and hands as they retreat past her. He twitches, but settles again fairly swiftly. Izuna is actually detectable past his brother now, hot but fiercely contained like the fire in a forge rather than Madara's rampaging wildfire. The contrast is oddly comfortable. Kita picks up her embroidery again, half slipping into a similarly meditative state as she continues highlighting Tsukuyumi's slaughter of the goddess of food with silver accents, half an eye on the ongoing game in the garden. It's a very pleasant way to finish off the morning. The weather finally improves and missions start up with a vengeance. Lots of merchants want their goods escorted to cities as quickly as possible despite the flooded roads, so they can sell their goods before anybody else and make a larger profit. Madara is sent on one such escort mission to Tanzakagai, along with 4 older members of the Outguard, while Izuna is on another to the Fire Temple. Izuna's party is also taking along Uchiha trading goods, including a respectable quantity of pale green silk which no silkworms were killed to make. Silk that Kita has spun, from cocoons she raised herself. Izuna has been firmly instructed on what the silk is worth, what price to offer first, and what lower limit to accept on the haggling. He had clearly found her seriousness adorable. Madara suspects Izuna will do his best to get a good deal for her, if only to lord it over Madara later. Izuna is very interested in Kita, possibly because she seems to be developing a habit of surprising them both. First it was the sensing, then it was the fantastical and original bedtime stories provided for their younger cousin's amusement. Most recently their newly developed meditation habit has started to bear fruit. People no longer tense or turn around when he walks up behind them. In fact, several Outguard members have jumped when he has spoken up from behind them. It is amusing. It is also embarrassing that he never noticed this was an issue until Kita pointed it out. His cousins are far less wary of him now, as though his efforts to rein in his chakra are perceptible to them even though they are too young to really recognize what they were feeling. Madara is also starting to notice other people's chakra at close range, probably because he is not hopelessly fouling up his own senses anymore. Izuna is bright and hot and contained. Kita is a much gentler glow, moving with steady purpose and radiating subtle warmth. He can feel her chakra when they meditate together, and it's almost like being curled up by the Iori on a winter's evening, comfortable and soothingly soporific. He accidentally fell asleep last time and started drooling. Izuna laughed at him. He should buy Kita a present in Tanzakagai. She is calm and pleasant and not giggly or overly fearful, all of which he appreciates very much, but he wants her to like him as a person. As a friend, even. It is hard to talk about personal things when Izuna is always there poking her with words, which Kita handles very gracefully even when she is telling his nosy little brother to mind his own business, so maybe a gift would help. What should he get though? What kinds of things does she like? Well, sweets might work, but they've not talked about favorite foods yet, and he doesn't want to assume. She likes doing embroidery, she said as much, and she likes art, so maybe some prints if he can find some. Something legendary, or else of a play or story? It is that or clothes. Kita is very careful of her everyday brown cotton kimono, but surreptitious glances with his Sharingan active have revealed lines of wear that imply it is at least second-hand. Probably inherited from her mother or grandmother. Kimono are frequently passed down families like that. He can't buy her a new kimono, that would have implications, and she is 12. He is not going to do that, but he could probably get away with an umbrella or a new set of obi cords. Something useful but not too personal, that says he is paying attention and wants her to like him. That he isn't taking her for granted despite his father having arranged the betrothal without asking either of them. If all else fails, an omamori will at least say he's thought of her while away from the clan. Kita wears kimono when embroidering, because the slow, delicate work of piecing patchwork and adding decorative details requires a lot of sitting indoors in good light and keeping the work clean. However, gardening or helping in the fields is messy work, especially in this muddy late spring, so she changes into the everyday outdoor outfit of every member of the Uchiha clan: dark long-sleeved shirt with the clan crest embroidered on the back of the neck and matching ankle-length trousers, to weed Ohabrioba's flower beds and help Hikaku clear the koi pond of winter debris. Bandaging the trouser legs around her calves to keep warm and reduce the amount of laundry she will need to do. Afterwards, fewer changes of water to soak the laundry in if the mud is only on the bandages. They can be rinsed separately in the river first. Ohabrioba does not have a vegetable garden at all. The only regularly harvested plants in her entire garden are the plum tree, the persimmon tree, and the bamboo. Everything else is selected purely for aesthetic reasons. Kita is utterly baffled that such a thing is even possible. Ohabrioba doesn't even do the harvesting herself. At least several of the trees in the garden are oaks. She will be able to trim branches off them for her caterpillars, which are due to hatch soon. Now the weather is better. Papa has moved the trays over and Ohabrioba has let her clear and air out the loft for them. Ohabrioba's loft is very large, so only a quarter of it is needed for the covered caterpillar trays on their step stand. Kita is given another quarter to keep her dowry in, which so far consists of a loom, a reeling rack, a spindle, and a chest containing the kimono Mama has given her that she is not allowed to wear yet, the patterned scrolls of patchwork coat lining designs, and all the silk scraps and threads. The silk scraps take up much more room than the kimono do. The remaining half of the loft contains things that belong to Ninigi-sama and his wife that Hikaku and his siblings will probably want to have and use later. Furniture, kimono which Kita knows she will be helping Ohabrioba air out in the next week or two before carefully folding back into storage for another year, private correspondence, even a biwa. Stored separately are other things, possibly things that Ohabrioba has inherited from hers and Taijima-sama's mother. Another smaller set of drawers containing carefully wrapped kimono, a lacquered wooden case containing a koto, and a chest filled with a range of other objects carefully wrapped in cloth and paper, making identification impossible. Kita only knows about those things because after she cleaned the loft, Ohabrioba had her bring the koto down, carefully setting it up in the room that used to be Ninigi-sama's study. A lady should know how to play an instrument, Ohabrioba tells her, so I will be teaching you the koto. Music lessons, however, do not begin immediately. Kita guesses this is because Ohabrioba wants to refamiliarize herself with the instrument before demonstrating its use. It's nice hearing the music drifting through the house as she cooks, cleans, and finishes up the quilting on Hikaku's coat. It's also nice to be in the garden feeding the koi to musical accompaniment. 2 weeks after the weather changes, while Madara and Izuna are both away on missions, Sanasawa-san visits to discuss sealing with her in more depth. Ohabrioba turns hosting the clan scholar into a teaching experience, so Kita sits at the table in her pale purple silk kimono and cream and gold obi, her hair piled up on the top of her head and held in place by borrowed pins as Ohabrioba performs an informal tea ceremony. While Taijima-sama was more interested in what her seals do and that they are reliable, Sanasawa-san is primarily interested in how they work. Kita brings out all her notes, which is a little embarrassing when they are scribbled on mismatched paper scraps and offcuts, bits of bark, and the occasional old roof tile. She should make a fair copy of everything on good paper now she has the time and means to do so. More embarrassing is when Sanasawa-san starts asking what all the little notations mean. What does this scribble mean, Kita-chan? Kita squints at it. I think that's the ideogram I came up with for the little things that cause infections, Sanasawa-san. It's her mental picture of a bacterium, a blobby oval with fine cilia sticking out, making it look a little like a deformed gear. The middle-aged man blinks at her. Firstly, the word you are looking for is germ, Kita-chan. Secondly, what do you mean by a thought picture? That isn't a word? She was sure it is a word. It's a symbol that represents an object or idea, she tries, a little wrong-footed by having to explain something she just knows. Kind of like a kanji, but there wasn't a kanji, so I made something up. Sanasawa's face does something subtle but interesting, as does his chakra. Firstly, there are in fact kanji for writing germ, he informs her firmly. Secondly, do you use many original symbols in your sealing? Kita thinks about it. The problem with kanji is that there is a separate symbol for every concept, rather than a small collection of phonetic symbols that can be assembled to form the word of your choice. It is also only possible to teach these symbols at a certain rate, and a teacher who thinks that your calligraphy is insufficiently legible can significantly hamper your progress in learning said symbols. She could have used hiragana, but in Japanese homophones are written identically, and sealing is not a discipline where it is safe to confuse meanings. Probably, Kamami-sensei held me back in the advanced script lessons over my poor calligraphy, so I only know a few hundred of the less common kanji. It is compulsory for all Uchiha children to know the 1,000 common kanji, but no more than that. Kita stayed on out of choice, hoping to learn more, but has thus far been hobbled by her teacher's poor opinion of her calligraphy. She does have a wider vocabulary than she did 2 years ago, but not by as much as she could have. The scholar frowns. So does Ohabrioba. I will take over your education there, Ohabrioba says firmly. There are a great many kanji, and as wife of a clan head you will need to memorize them all, as you are likely to be required to see and use them in correspondence, politics, and poetry. You will also need them to read the clan's histories. Start with the histories, Sanasawa says firmly. She can memorize them by rote, which will allow her to learn to recognize the individual kanji more swiftly. Calligraphy is less urgent, and can be fitted in around her other duties. He paused. Madara-kun's calligraphy is very fine and his Sharingan has placed him well ahead of his peers in memorizing characters. I will inform Taijima-sama that I am assigning him to tutor Kita-chan for his schoolroom hours. That will work well, Ohabrioba agrees. Madara-kun can help Kita-chan become aware of the gaps in her understanding, as well as assist her in filling them in. It will also give them something to talk about. So Ohabrioba has noticed that it is Izuna who always carries the conversation whenever her older nephews visit. Well, this will at least give Kita time with her betrothed without his younger brother intruding. Madara was not expecting to be scheduled calligraphy lessons the moment he was back from his mission, barely giving him enough time to visit the clan bathhouse and change clothes. That he is giving the lessons only clears up part of his confusion. Yes, he has taught Izuna most of the more complex kanji, mostly by writing them out so his little brother can copy them with his Sharingan, but that doesn't make him a teacher. That his kohai is Kita only adds to his questions. Thankfully his betrothed has the answers. He has been tasked with helping Ohabrioba get her up to speed on vocabulary and kanji. Seeing as Madara used his Sharingan in every single script lesson he had after activating it and swiftly completed all of Sanasawa-sensei's available material in a manner the sensei described as competent but uncreative, he can't really say he's surprised that he's being expected to help. He has more free time than most people, being his father's heir. It also provides the perfect opportunity to give Kita his present, which he has been worrying about all the way back from Tanzakagai. He has been consoling himself that even if it doesn't go down well, the furoshiki is fancy enough to count as a gift all by itself. It's a cotton and silk blend painted with a vibrant asymmetric pattern of koi and ripples and floating leaves. But he really wants her to like his present. It felt like a good idea at the time, despite how much he's been second-guessing himself all the way home. The rest of the squad teasing him didn't help. I bought you a gift, he blurts out as she opens the shoji to the room that used to be his uncle's study. Thank you, Madara-kun, she says reflexively, eyes dropping to his hands, which are empty. It's in my bag, he adds, waving at the canvas sack slung over his shoulder, which has his calligraphy set and the old, worn dictionary of kanji that is one of the few actual books handed down from Outguard head to Outguard head in it as well, along with a book of haiku than had been his mother's. It is more fun to practice calligraphy with poetry than just endlessly copying out single characters. Do I make tea? Kita asks abruptly, suddenly looking as awkward as he feels. The reminder that she doesn't really know what to do about their situation stiffens his spine. He is 15 and knows what is expected of them both, so he is responsible for helping her learn what she needs to know. No, I am here to teach you, so your mind should be on the lesson, not on hosting me. Ohabrioba will bring tea, because she is hosting me and arranged for me to teach you. Kita nods, visibly relieved to have clear instructions. Madara gently herds her into the room, closes the shoji behind them and sets his bag on the floor by the table. Sit on my left, he tells her. I'm going to show you the kanji and then you're going to write them out. He has wax boards for her to practice on, easily wiped clean, so they do not waste paper. If he uses chakra to recover the ink he can even reuse that too. He starts by having Kita go through the book telling him what she recognizes and having her write random ones to prove it. Seeing how the kanji are shaped by a person holding the brush in their left hand is fascinating. He uses his Sharingan while she's not looking, so he can replicate it if necessary on a mission, and the characters are well formed and recognizable, if a little idiosyncratic. Not that there's anything wrong with having a visible style. She knows the basic 1000 plus another 216, as well as about 50 additional characters relevant to fabric, dyeing, embroidery and the Shinto pantheon. Not surprising considering her training and that a lot of clansmen have homages to their lineage printed in their coat lining. It's a solid foundation for a 12-year-old. Yes, she could be further ahead, but she is not behind. Teaching her is slower than teaching Izuna was. She has no Sharingan, so he has to coach her through the brush strokes several times, and being a girl she knows hiragana not katakana so he has to read her each character's definition so she understands what it means. She's very focused though, reciting his instructions under her breath to herself as she writes and obediently coming up with short sentences involving each new character, so she can fix its meaning in her mind along with its shape. Ohabrioba brings tea while Kita is using the 4 new kanji he has taught her in haiku describing them. She has a surprisingly quick mind for counting the syllables, although her creations are not particularly elegant. They are amusing though. He has her write them down on paper at the end of the session along with the definitions, to help the lesson to stick and to preserve the poetry for posterity. Describing a loom as having jaws is a novel mental image, as is a tea bowl being menacing or describing a muddy puddle as a lagoon for a spider to sail across. Still, he is looking forward to the next lesson. The next 8 kanji all have exactly the same pronunciation, and it's going to be very funny. Here, he says after she has documented her ditties and carefully set the paper aside to dry. You're present. He sets it on the table, then busies himself with his lukewarm tea. Kita carefully wipes her hands and her side of the table so they are clean of stray ink splashes before sliding the parcel towards her, face softening into amazed delight as she takes in the pattern for a shiki. Madara slides a little chakra into his eyes to preserve her expression in his memory forever. It takes her moments to untie the knots, revealing the pair of indigo house slippers with a cheery print that he'd originally thought was baby turtles in water, but the salesperson had told him was little spools with trailing threads. I thought you'd like your own pair rather than using one of Auntie's guest pairs, Madara said hurriedly into the sudden hush. They're printed with little spools, so I thought you'd like them? Does she like them? Kita looks up at him, eyes shining with tears. I love them, she says a little hoarsely, then leans over and hugs him tightly around the ribcage. Madara experiences an instant of blind panic, then remembers Izuna's various instances of being utterly overwhelmed by random emotions when he was younger, and hugs back. This isn't like all those courtship horror stories he's overheard various older cousins exchanging. Kita is only 12, not 20 or even 16, so she's still a child in body and heart, if perhaps not in mind considering she's a self-taught sealing master, and children need to be hugged. It's just, he is not usually the person being approached for hugs unless the child needing hugs is Izuna, and Izuna has recently started insisting he's too old to be fussed over like that. I love them, she repeats, voice muffled by his shirt. Thank you so much, Madara-kun. Madara is abruptly reminded that Kita has only been living with Ohabrioba for a little over a month and probably misses living at home. She has 5 younger siblings, and Madara can't imagine living in a separate building to his little brother, and not being on hand whenever Izuna needs something. Her parents' house is barely a 10-minute walk away, but she's very clearly homesick all the same. Having her own pair of house slippers will make this house more like a home for her. He's helping her feel more at home, helping her be more comfortable with the changes his father has imposed on her. He's been overthinking things, hasn't he? Kita's just a child and children want to know they matter to the people who are responsible for them. Madara can do that. He hugs her a little tighter and leans his face against the top of her head. You are very welcome, Kita-chan, he assures her. I want you to be part of my family. She has always been part of his clan, but clan is not quite the same as family. That sets off more shaking and sobbing, but that's okay. He's honestly surprised she's managed to keep it all inside for this long. The Uchiha clan is infamous for fiery tempers and strong emotional reactions. Any other clan child would have done this weeks ago. More proof that she's more intelligent than average. He's going to have to keep an eye out for this, isn't he? He doesn't want her hiding her feelings and making herself unhappy when it might be something he can fix for her. They're betrothed, he's supposed to be looking after her. How will he ever manage to lead the outguard if he can't even care for one girl? He needs to get to know her better. At least the calligraphy lessons will give him an excuse to do so without Izuna interrupting all the time. Kita slowly settles into a new routine, which manages to be a mix of the comfortably familiar and the confusingly alien. Every morning she checks on her freshly hatched caterpillars, familiar, and cuts extra branches for them if necessary, then washes and goes to help with breakfast. Breakfast is both familiar and unfamiliar. She has been helping Mama with the cooking for years, but what Hikaku and his younger siblings eat is not the same as Kita is used to eating. They have dried fish flakes for breakfast, along with the usual rice, miso and pickles, rather than natto. Kita has to admit that dried fish tastes better than natto, but it still takes getting used to. After breakfast comes housework and training, the former familiar and the latter not. As the prospective bride of the head of Outguard, she is a target for Senju reprisals, and a target for other people too, but only the Senju are specifically mentioned, so needs to be capable of defending both herself and any future children. Her wire handling skills are deemed sufficient. Papa taught her how because the test of good wire is smooth handling, but her knife skills are apparently not enough on their own despite being called good, so on alternate days she has naginata lessons. When not spending her mornings being drilled in stances and sweeps until her arms burn, there is laundry and dusting and sweeping to be done, along with gardening and food preparation. She does not have to mend tatama or shoji, Ohabrioba pays somebody else to carry out domestic repairs, but that's not much of a respite. Lunch is a quiet meal, because all the boys are given bento at breakfast so they don't have to come home in between their own lessons in the schoolroom and on the training field. Ohabrioba generally uses the occasion to either discuss homeguard matters over a simple meal, or to teach Kita how to lay out dishes for specific festivals and occasions, which involves a lot of very beautiful and variously shaped chinaware. Learning to actually cook the dishes will be put off until the various events arise. The clan can't afford to waste food. The Uchiha might be a noble clan, but it's not so wealthy as to be able to afford out-of-season extravagances. After lunch come the more mentally taxing lessons. Madara teaches her new kanji and corrects her calligraphy about twice a week, but the actual timing is fluid as he regularly takes missions and leads patrols. There can be anything from 2 days to an entire week between lessons. If he's not available, Ohabrioba allows her an hour to practice independently, playing the koto in the study with her and critiquing her efforts. She is required to write each kanji on paper at least once a day, and all her efforts are then presented to Madara at the next lesson so he can gauge her improvement. Kita has only recently been let off from writing the first 10 kanji he taught her. She has 35 she is currently working on, and it is very challenging indeed to not muddle them up in either meaning or order of brushstrokes. A good half of the difficulty comes from switching to using her left hand, although she has always done that at home anyway and can only write some kanji with her left hand. She still lacks the muscle memory in her left hand for about half the common kanji, but the ones she has used in her sealing are more practiced. If Madara is teaching her, the lesson lasts until mid-afternoon. If he is not, Kita has koto practice until that same time. Ohabrioba gives her an actual lesson once weekly, but on all the other days Kita is expected to go over what she has learned until it becomes automatic, fluent, and above all else tuneful. Kita likes the koto and likes music, but she does not like practicing. Scales are not interesting and it is incredibly hard to move the bridges to exactly the right place on a first try. She is getting better, but her progress is a frustratingly snail-like crawl. On days when Madara does teach her, koto practice takes place after the lesson. She cannot escape koto practice. She is doomed to sore fingers and frustration. After koto practice, Kita either has clan history to memorize, examples of home guard disputes to study, and then discuss with Ohabrioba, or tea ceremony practice. Tea ceremony practice is her least favorite. Every movement has to be perfect, like a long, slow, and incredibly intricate dance, and Kita is not graceful. She is in the midst of the growth spurt, she has never had dancing lessons, and she tends to bang her elbows on things. The only positive thing Ohabrioba has to say about her efforts is that she has good sleeve etiquette and proper posture. She will improve the more she practices, but repetition does not nurture enjoyment. Then there is dinner to make and serve to ravenous little boys, dishes to wash while Ohabrioba has little boys to wash, the supervision of small clean full boys until their bedtime, which frequently involves them wanting her to do things with them, and then an hour or so of freedom until her own bedtime. Those evening hours are when Ohabrioba has most of her social guests, as opposed to the guests visiting on clan business who stop by in the afternoons while Kita is practicing koto or studying. There are probably occasional morning guests too, but Kita is usually out of the house in the mornings so doesn't see them. Sometimes she is expected to sit in on the evening socializing, but mostly she is granted free time. As the evenings are bright enough now that she doesn't need a lantern to see by, Kita spends her precious free time rereading and softly reciting the clan history she is supposed to memorize, playing around with seal ideas and thinking up designs for new coat patterns, aided by Madara lending her his mother's copy of the creation myth and various other illustrated mythic texts, including a print book of the Takamigara, half of which he hadn't actually been able to read, because they were written in hiragana and he'd never been taught them. Hiragana are women's script and his father hadn't seen the need. Kita had instantly walked him through the syllabary, then read him the first page out loud so he could take in how the script worked. He'd still let her keep the stories though. He'd quickly leafed through them with his Sharingan active, recited a random page to her to prove he knew it now, and then dashed off for the mission he was going to be late for after staying so long. Kita finds it a bit unfair how blatantly the Sharingan lets a person cheat. Madara had probably learned all his kanji inside a week after finding out it let him do that. She obviously can't do that, so has to chip away at them the hard way like everybody else without the Sharingan does. If he isn't dashing off on missions, the evenings are generally when Madara comes over to spend time with her. To begin with, Izuna came too, but as the weeks pass he seems to lose interest and stops. Kita thinks he's decided she's boring until Madara gleefully reveals that his little brother has a crush. She immediately resigns herself to Izuna's eventual return, either to ramble adoringly or to mope and wail because the girl in question isn't interested. Neither happens. Izuna proves shockingly well-adjusted in matters of romantic relationships, spends the months over the height of summer dallying with one of the Uchiha clan's many girls called Naka, Kojin lineage apparently, then somehow ends the relationship with no hard feelings on either side around the time that Kita is spending all her time drying and reeling her silk cocoons, supervising the breeding and freeing of her moths. Boiling those cocoons separately from the lower quality cocoons, of which there are fewer this time, and setting up the spindle so she can spend the next few months making green gold thread in every available moment. Madara is as baffled by Izuna's romantic success as she is. However, the respite from the 14-year-old's interference is very welcome. It gives her time to talk about more personal things with Madara and for him to decide to share similarly personal things with her, including how he wants peace so the clan can prosper. Madara's mother died when he was 9, so he doesn't remember her very well. Partly due to it being before he got his Sharingan, but mostly because his father had taken over his education when he was 4 and his not having spent much time with her after that. Izuna remembers her better despite being 14 months younger, as father hadn't taken much of an interest in his second son until after his wife's death. Izuna often comments on Madara having their mother's looks, which Ohaberioba confirmed once. Father has said a few times that Madara has his mother's soft heart, generally while disparaging him over some tactical choice which he disapproves of. He doesn't see much of his mother's family. They're the branch of the Uchiha who do most of the trading missions, pretending to be regular civilians and selling Uchiha white charcoal, pine charcoal, ink sticks and other goods across Fire Country and various neighboring nations, then using the money to buy salt, dried fish, iron sand, various other necessities and a smattering of luxuries. Most of them don't have a known lineage, but they're possibly the clan members with the most personal wealth and are certainly the most well-traveled. Some of them go on trading ventures that last most of a year. A number of his variously distant maternal cousins are in the Outguard and most of them have extremely respectable chakra reserves. Those not in the Outguard generally don't develop the Sharingan though, as being mostly traders limits their combat experience to training and the occasional bandit ambush, which is not really the kind of environment conducive to activating the clan's bloodline. Madara knows he has far more chakra than his father, even at 15, and that he has his mother's blood to thank there. He does look a bit like his cousins on that side too. They're all more solidly built than father is, with broader shoulders and thicker waists. They also tend to be loudly sociable, which Madara most certainly is not. Clearly that's something Izuna inherited instead. Kita's not anywhere near as sociable as Izuna is, but she's not as reclusive as Madara either. Not that he doesn't like company, but he's discovered since learning to rein in his chakra that there is such a thing as too much company. Kita, however, doesn't mind small children and is happy to be in the general vicinity of a conversation, even if it doesn't actually include her. She's a good listener and really interested in learning new things, not just practical things, but absolutely anything. She wants to know about places he's been on missions, people he's met, stories he's heard, and is even happy to listen to him talk about training and patrols. She also asks questions about all those things, sometimes to fish for more details but other times just to get his opinion, which he then has to explain with other details. Kita never dismisses his opinions or thoughts as naive or unrealistic, but she doesn't agree with him just because he's going to be the next head of the Outguard either. She listens, she counter-argues, she expects him to defend his position, and she will acknowledge the merits and benefits of his perspective that she can see before poking holes in it. He's not been able to talk to anybody like this since that brief summer he spent meeting Hashirama down by the river, and he's missed it. Madara finds himself speaking about his dream for peace and is utterly delighted when she actually agrees with him, and then backs up her agreement with various practical points about how the Uchiha clan runs to support peace. War is expensive, she says, then points to all the ways it costs the clan, in iron and steel and fabric and labor and lives, and talks about what it's like to live on clan grounds when the entire Outguard is away, how less gets done and everything takes longer because farmers and craftspeople are doing double duty patrolling the borders and the constant low-level strain that comes from knowing that if another clan were to attack them now, they would be extremely vulnerable. He's never had the domestic perspective on the costs of war spelled out like that before. He knows war is terrible for what it does to the people fighting it. He's not really considered that it costs the rest of the clan just as much. Her perspective on peace is different too. She describes war as an imposition to contrast peace as a collaboration. Her explanation makes sense too. War is incited by a minority, who, by attacking the ones they have decided to be offended by, force everybody else to take sides and take up arms, either to defend themselves or to support their allies. Peace, on the other hand, is enacted by the majority, who all work together to maintain it and resolve disputes between individuals before warfare can develop. I think waging war is a sign of failure, she tells him quietly one hot summer evening after Tanabata while spinning silk on the Engawa, her eyes never leaving the fine green gold thread being extracted from the fuzzy mass on the spindle. A sign that you have been utterly unable to come to an agreement by other means, so are resorting to hitting the other party over the head until they give in. Declaring war on somebody says you are unwilling to collaborate or compromise, and not wanting to work with somebody is often a sign of greed or some other major flaw. What was that war between the fire and tea daimyos about? Money, Madara says sourly. She's right. It's uncomfortable, but she is right. Why are the Uchiha even fighting the Senju these days? Revenge for everybody the other clan has killed? Well, the Uchiha have killed just as many, and chasing that revenge is just leading to more people dying, so who exactly is responsible for those deaths again? Fighting is easy though, Kita muses. We're on our side, everybody else is the enemy, and because they're the enemy they're wrong and we're right. Peace is hard because you have to consider all the perspectives and recognize that maybe you were wrong. Homeguard stuff is hard because everybody's Uchiha and everybody thinks they're right, but in an argument with 5 sides obviously they can't all be right. Madara winces. He is so glad nobody is expecting him to be head of Homeguard. It sounds like a nightmare. One that he is well aware he does not have the patience or the diplomatic skills for. Leading the outguard is much more straightforward. The problem is that while in those cases everybody is generally wrong about something, they all also have things they're not wrong about, and there is so much negotiating and flattering and reasoning with people you have to do until they all realize that the proposed solution is going to benefit them somehow. That's the hard part of peace, I think, ensuring absolutely everybody has a stake in it, because if everybody knows they're going to benefit then they're all willing to help make it happen. That seems far more practical and reasonable than Hashirama's assumption that they can just decide they want peace and make everybody else go along with it. Madara already knows that will never work. He can't just make the whole clan do what he wants. So how do we get the clan to want peace? Kita frowns thoughtfully, busy hands pulling incredibly fine thread from the fluff on the spindle. Well, first we have to get them to see that the clan is better off overall in the years when we don't clash with the Senju as much. Also appealing to people's pride over how the only reason we fight the Senju so much is that greedy civilians take advantage of the rift between our clans to hire one of us because some economic rival has hired the other clan. I mean, if that happened with a clan we weren't deadly enemies with, the warriors sent to fight would at least try to avoid conflict with the other party, doing the minimum for defense until the end of the mission then go home. Or if we were hired to take something, wait until the hired shinobi were busy or had left. But it's the Senju, so we charge in and people die and the clients benefit. She pauses. At least, that's what the stories I've heard from Outguard members imply. No, you're right, Madara agrees quickly. Clients do take advantage and squads whose missions come into conflict with other clans do try to avoid fighting them if possible. Unless those other clans were Senju allies, of course, things were less predictable then. I mean, I've been on missions where a client's rival has hired Aburame and the mission leader decided the best course of action was to discreetly meet the Aburame team leader in a tea house, discuss objectives and mission requirements, and compromise in such a way that respective contracts are kept to the letter if perhaps not in spirit. Or compensation was offered to the team whose mission objective was going to be compromised, because we don't want to fight them and they don't want to fight us either. Of course that doesn't always happen and it never happens on missions his father leads, but his father never goes on routine caravan guarding or small-time acquisition missions anyway. As his father's heir, Madara needs the experience of what happens on such missions because he will eventually be the person assigning them. But once he is Outguard head he won't have the time to run them himself anymore. If only we could negotiate with the Senju like that, Kita sighs. Then again, if we had peace, what would you do? I mean, if we get a real lasting peace, acting as a military force for hire isn't something that's going to bring in money anymore, is it? Madara has not thought about that. Peace, true peace, would leave him without an income or anything to do beyond falconry and sparring. Kita smiles at him tentatively. Chakra techniques have non-violent uses too. Maybe between missions you could wander around the clan, see what people who aren't full-time shinobi do with their chakra? I think you'd be surprised. I will, he assures her quickly, reaching over to ruffle her hair. Thanks, Kita-chan. She supports his dreams for peace and that's possibly the best thing about getting to know her. Shortly after Oban, Kita notices that one of Ohabrioba's regular visitors is not, in fact, visiting to discuss clan matters. Tsuyoshi-san, one of the senior Outguard members, whose name she only knows because Izuna insisted on dragging all Taijima-sama's main lieutenants over and introducing her to them as my brother's betrothed, is visiting Ohabrioba twice a week, sometimes more, because he is courting her. Kita's not sure if she's surprised she missed it until now or if she's surprised Ohabrioba is being courted at all. A little reflection reveals the latter, and she is disappointed in herself. Ohabrioba can't be much older than 30, which isn't so old really. She could still have several children if she wanted to. Mama is probably older than Ohabrioba and she doesn't think Mama is old. Armed with this information, Kita makes more of an effort to eavesdrop. It being autumn means her caterpillars don't need feeding, because the new batch are still in their eggs and won't hatch until April, and the garden doesn't need weeding either, so she has more time. Time she is currently using all of to spin in. However, there's no reason she can't spin just out of sight of the open study shoji, on the Engawa where she can enjoy the sunshine and see the koi pond. Ohaberioba's koto playing is always lovely to listen to after all. Izuna got a high price for her piece silk last spring and Kita has plans for that money, but this year she is weaving herself an obi from the cocoons of the moths that hatched. She is not going to even try to dye any of it, preserving its pale green coloring, and when it is all spun she is going to ask Grandma about a simple obi weave. Then once the obi is completed she will decide if she wants to keep it plain or embroider it. She will probably end up embroidering it, but she doesn't want to get ahead of herself. First spinning her silk, then weaving it, thinking about the embroidery now would be putting the cart before the horse. Kita has plenty of spinning left to do, so has plenty of time to eavesdrop in. Not that it's a particularly interesting conversation, music and theater, mainly, and Kita has never seen any plays. Or even read about any plays, to be honest. Not here at least. She's heard a bit of music. There are various Uchiha who play instruments and festivals are always loud and cheerful, but she doesn't know composers or civilian performers like Tsuyoshi or Ohaberioba clearly do. Love matches are the usual way Uchiha, and, as she is learning in her new lessons, most of the other ninja clans go about getting married. Arranged matches like Kita now has are the exception, and are usually only set up for political reasons. As a result they disproportionately affect the immediate family of a clan head. Taijima-sama arranging his son's match is therefore not too unusual. Non-Uchiha arranged marriages however do not have a clause for when one or other party falls in love with somebody else. That is an exclusively Uchiha attitude, because the Sharingan bloodline goes hand in hand with stronger emotional responses and a degree of difficulty in overcoming them. Uchiha are fiercely emotional in ways that civilian culture apparently frowns upon. Samurai literature condemns falling in love at all to be a sign of weak-mindedness. The Uchiha clan however knows that their hearts are their strength, so they make allowances for it. Other ninja clans make allowances for love matches for more pragmatic reasons. It's exponentially harder to marry off an unwilling ninja than an unwilling civilian. Civilian lovers who are set up for arranged marriages with people not of their choosing frequently commit suicide. Well, perhaps not frequently, but certainly often enough for it to be a popular literary trope. Ninja betrothed against their will, or whose civilian lovers are betrothed to third parties, are more likely to decide that murder will be effective in solving their problems. It doesn't happen so much nowadays, as word has got around. Even a civilian clan member's request to their lover's parents is likely to be accepted in light of murderous relatives potentially lurking in the wings. The peasant class don't do arranged marriages. Too much effort for not enough payoff when a love match between willing parties improves collaboration in a subsistence context, but the merchant class do it almost exclusively. As a result, a surprisingly large proportion of middle-class civilian women, and the occasional young man, are open to shinobi courtship despite the associated risks from rival clans. Her own great-grandparents are proof of that. Kita can see why though. It is better than having no choice at all. She has no objections to eventually marrying Madara. He is kind to her, and he is focused on the welfare of his clan as his life's primary goal, but it is comforting to know that, if she ever does fall in love, she will be free to pursue her heart. By the Chrysanthemum Festival in September the Uchiha already have mission offers for the following spring, to burn the half-rice fields of specific landowners within the Land of Fire who had taken advantage of the terrible weather much of the country suffered in the first half of this year by conspiring together to drive up prices. There are also contracts to attack and burn the caravans of certain tea merchants, no doubt to reduce competition and again drive up prices. Madara knows the clan will definitely take the field-burning missions, easy money, and also that the greedy landowners in question will doubtless be hiring the senju to protect their fields after losing the first crop. This is probably going to turn into yet another year-long war. The tea issue is more problematic, but after talking to Kita he tentatively suggests to his father that they steal the tea rather than burning it, and then sell it themselves. That will fulfill the contracts to the letter, bring in additional income for the clan and ensure the price of tea does not get driven up long-term. Moving the tea will be tricky, but Kita promises she can make a heavy goods seal that will allow the outguard to swiftly move and carry all that tea without it being obvious. She comes through on her promise a week into autumn, following a fortnight of testing supervised by Yamasachi-san and Sanasawa-sensei. It's a rather odd setup. The seal is stitched into the bottom of a shallow, very wide-based drawstring canvas bag and is little more than a thick outline surrounding a picture of a furled umbrella with the handle shaped like a parrot's head. It works by contact. The user first activates the seal with a touch of chakra, then shoves everything into the bag. The seal makes no distinction. So long as one end of an object can be slid into the bag it will vanish into the seal, and closes the seal with another application of chakra. Once the seal is closed, other things can be placed in the bag to hide the seal. Taking things out is more challenging. You have to have a firm picture of what you want as you add chakra to the seal, or else everything will simply come out in reverse order. Father, however, does not consider this a flaw. With sacks of tea it doesn't really matter. and Madara suspects these bags will soon see usage for both smuggling and storage. Dried foodstuffs and seals don't degrade and weapons don't rust, so clan outposts will probably want sets of these, appropriately labeled of course. The bags can be worn slung across the back, and although having the opening on the long side is a bit awkward, they're just the right size for storing a rolled-up overcoat or a few changes of clothes. With his father's approval, Kita spends the whole of the next month stitching seals into canvas bags made to her design by other members of the clan, all dyed indigo so as not to stand out against Outguard members' coats. Every single warrior gets one, although this massively depletes the clan's fabric stores. Being able to carry or loot extra food or weapons without being weighed down by them is an advantage they can't afford to pass by. His father orders a greater proportion of the coming year's harvest be dedicated to hemp to compensate for the reduced stock of canvas. Seeing as the Outguard will be entirely absent for most of spring and summer, and with the new seal bags enabling more efficient storage, the clan will hopefully not go short of food to enable this. They will probably grow more buckwheat in the late summer after the hemp has been harvested, which will mean eating more soba and less soy or adzuki the year after. With another long military season on the horizon, Ohabrioba and Tsuyoshi declare their intent to marry. This makes for all kinds of upsets. Ohabrioba will be moving into her husband's house, so will no longer be able to care for Hikaku, Hijiri, Hidaka and Benton, but more significantly will no longer be able to organize the upkeep of the clan hall as was her duty as only living close female relative of the Outguard head. Father decides that both these tasks are now Kita's problem, increases the allowance she has access to accordingly so she can hire on lower-ranking clan members to see to the cleaning, cooking and upkeep of the gardens, and leaves the fine details to the women to sort out. Ohabrioba rises to the occasion admirably, and Kita's grandmother also gets involved. By the first day of winter everything seems to have settled down again, with the main task at hand being wedding preparations. The date has been set for the 5th of January, but Madara's primary concern right now is Kita's birthday. She's going to be 13 in a little over a week. It's not a significant age, but he wants to give her something special regardless. He's just not sure what. Unexpectedly, the person who comes to his rescue is his father. Madara is dragged out on a very cold and snowy cross-country run to Kogiaigai, marched through a range of artisan establishments, and eventually settles on a glazed teapot with a bamboo handle over the top and a pair of yunomi. The yunomi make him blush a bit, because a matched pair like this, identically patterned but one slightly bigger than the other, are called married couple teacups. Teapots and yunomi are for brewing and drinking tea every day, rather than the elegant chawan which are only for tea ceremonies, and giving Kita a set like this is implying that one day they will live in the same house and drink tea together every day, just the two of them. Not entirely accurate. Izuna will be living with them too, unless he marries first and moves out, but the sentiment stands. His father seems approving of his choices and they move on to collect several different items from a range of other shops, all evidently ordered in advance as he only opens each parcel long enough to give its contents a cursory examination with his Sharingan before paying. After each shop they discreetly slide the purchases into their new umbrella bags, then once everything is done and they have eaten they run back to clan grounds in the early dark. On the way back Madara finds himself wondering what Kita is going to give him for his birthday after the winter solstice. He's going to be 16, which is significant as he will be old enough to lead missions, and with how busy the past few months have been, he's not sure when she would have had the time to buy or make him anything. It doesn't really matter, she doesn't need to get him anything, but he's still hopeful. More importantly, now he knows what to do and where to go for future gifts, which he's very grateful for. When Kita's a bit older he'll ask his father about commissions and who the clan patronizes for those. He can't always just buy things off the shelf, not when he's going to succeed his father as Outguard head. Leading a noble clan like the Uchiha means setting an example, not just following other people's lead. Kita has certainly seen clan weddings before, but Ohabrioba's is the first one she will be attending as a guest rather than just a spectator. She therefore has to embroider the clan crest over the back seam of her beautiful wisteria kimono with cream silk, so it will be appropriately formal for the occasion. She doesn't have much time, not now she's responsible for the upkeep of both the house she lives in, now Hikaku's house rather than Ohabrioba's, and the clan hall where Taijima-sama lives with Madara and Izuna. Most of the work is organizational and financial, keeping the kitchen stocked, doing the laundry, sending appropriate people over to cook, clean and carry out necessary maintenance, and then paying them, but it's still a lot. Ohabrioba will continue tutoring her on home guard things for another few years, but Kita will have to visit the older woman for that now and that will make things more challenging. Actually, she will probably have to invite Ohabrioba over to visit her, because all the necessary records will be staying where they are. As will the formal tea service and other accessories. Ohabrioba is marrying a man of no known lineage, so she is not leaving the Amaterasu lineage entirely, although her children will not be able to claim it, But she will still be dependent on her husband's income rather than her brother's, despite Taijima-sama likely providing her with a generous dowry. Tsuyoshi-san has spent the past few months carrying out significant renovations to his new house, so it will be more suitable to his bride's station, but it is still not quite as grand as Hikaku's, where the front hall opens into a formal reception room rather than directly into the main living room with the Iori. The only other house with a formal reception room is the clan hall. Kita suspects that Hikaku's house is technically supposed to belong to the home guard head, but under Taijima-sama it has become simply a cadet Amaterasu lineage property. Kita has not managed to get any weaving done yet this autumn. First the seal, now Ohabrioba's marriage and the associated changes. She has at least managed to get Madara's birthday present finished though, which is something. She's made him hilt wrapping tape and a hanging cord to tie his sword to his belt with, both out of her real wild silk. They are braided rather than woven and more easily hidden when guests suddenly visit while she is working. She partially disguised her intentions there by making herself new obi cords as well, which she will be wearing for the wedding in February. She isn't quite 13 and she has so much to do. She's technically responsible for 2 households, still has lots of Mary Poppins bags to make for the home guard. Our guard orders came first due to the upcoming conflict, but the home guard needs them just as much, if not more, is basically raising 2-year-old Benton. Ohabrioba has increased the frequency of cooking lessons in light of her imminent departure from the house, and Kita also has a bunch of patchwork coats, belonging to clan elders to freshen up and repair in time for the wedding. Her calligraphy lessons with Madara are positively restful in comparison. She is so busy she completely forgets it's her birthday until Hidaka presents her with a set of lacquered hair combs after breakfast, his 2 older brothers looking on with barely concealed nerves. "Thank you very much," she says automatically to hide the pang in her heart at not being at home with her family today, then looks more closely at her gift. "Oh, there's one for every season, how lovely! Orchid and peony for spring, lotus and water iris for summer, chrysanthemum and dianthus for autumn, and plum, pine and bamboo for winter." "The winter one is the prettiest," Hidaka says eagerly, bouncing on his toes. "Like you, Kita-ne." "Well, I am a winter's child, aren't I, Hidaka-kun?" Kita replies, opening her arms so he can dash in for a hug. "Thank you again for my beautiful present, Hikaku-kun, Hijiri-kun. I will be sure to wear them often." It is evident that quite a lot of pocket money has been spent on these, or else that they have raided their mother's jewelry box. She hopes it is the former. Benton deserves to inherit her mother's treasures. The day continues according to her usual routine, but with gifts appearing at odd interludes. Izuna briefly crashes her Naginata training session to give her a new Uchiha fan frame and a set of 3 different prints to mount on it. Papa visits at lunchtime with Tadashina, Naka and Midori to present her with a new woven basket loaded with useful gifts, including 2 new Nagajuban printed in colors that complement her kimonos and a wealth of dyed and metal-wrapped silk threads. Her little sisters go home again immediately afterwards, but Papa stays on. "It's for you to use on your clothing, North Star," Papa tells her firmly as they eat their bento together, "not for coats, unless it's your own coat. Embroider an obi, add detailing to a printed kimono, or buy a new plain one and do all the work yourself. Wear your beauty on the outside as well as on the inside." "Yes, Papa. I promise." Grandma has included meticulously detailed instructions for weaving a plain obi, a few notes on how to weave a 2-tone reversible obi, and 2 simple damask charts, one for checks and one for a Bishamon tortoiseshell lattice, as well as orders to invite her to visit when she decides to start the plain obi, so she can ensure Kita doesn't accidentally set the loom up wrong. "Your grandma's joints are aching today, so she couldn't come herself," Papa adds quietly, wiping his mouth after finishing his food. "We've done very well out of the new field. Your Aunt Tsuyu has promised to supply you with paper at reduced cost in exchange for a share of the hemp, and we planted buckwheat as a second crop." "Thank you, Papa. He and Mama could have kept that paper for themselves or sold it, but they've given it, or part of it anyway, to her, for her calligraphy practice and seals and patterns. Once Madara-sama says my calligraphy is good enough, I'll make a wall scroll for her." "She will like that," Papa says warmly, bending down, not as far as he used to, she is definitely growing, to kiss her hair. "Take care of yourself, Kita." Her progress in kanji is currently at a crawl. She has so little time to practice in, and her current 15 are intensely complicated. But Madara still visits twice a week despite only having taught her 2 new characters in all of the past month. The more complicated characters have accumulated despite originally having been taught over several weeks. The simpler ones they were interspersed with having been set aside as fluent. Today he gives her a birthday present before starting. It is a teapot of her very own and a pair of husband and wife teacups. Kita loves them, not just for the implication of commitment. One day they will have their own home and drink tea together in it, but because with Ohabrioba marrying she will have to host her lessons herself, or else visit Madara at the clan hall. If she hosts here she doesn't want to use the teacups that belong to Hikaku's parents, and using guest teacups wouldn't be appropriate either. Now, however, she has her own cups to drink tea with Madara from and her own pot to serve with. She makes tea in them immediately, much to Madara's bashful delight. Not that it prompts him to go any easier on her as she attempts to form the kanji 4-foothold, fear, threaten, rectify and echo without hesitating over the strokes or getting the lengths and angles wrong. There are 20 separate strokes in echo, 3 little characters squished on top of a larger flattened one, and fitting them all in is hard. Taijima-sama arriving after koto practice is unexpected. Ohabrioba expecting Kita to serve him formal tea is even less expected, but at least she already knew she was doing tea ceremony practice today and is suitably dressed in her pale iris kimono and the cream obi with gold woven through it to scatter roses across the fabric, her new combs sitting in her hair. Ohabrioba provides fresh yokan to go with the tea and Kita slowly, deliberately carries out a chalk eye before her uncomfortably attentive audience. She knows she is not good at this. Having to do it all right-handed does not help. The tea ceremony cannot be done left-handed, no matter how much less awkward that would be for her. Ohabrioba and Taijima-sama engage in casual conversation as she carefully portions out matcha 1 cup at a time, adds hot water and whisks it in the appropriate manner. This is part of a less formal tea ceremony, so she has to ignore the talk even though she is the subject of their conversation. At least it is not her lack of fluidity in serving tea that is being discussed. Once tea has been served, making her own tea last, it must be drunk, which also takes time. Kita carefully cradles her very precious and beautiful tea bowl, peering at her 2 guests over the top of it. Ohabrioba is wearing a soft sepia kimono damasked with withered leaves and a faintly mottled pale gray obi embroidered with crows in flight. Taijima-sama has on a charcoal kimono damasked with clouds, delicate silver bolts of lightning embroidered here and there. She is 13 today, has been learning tea ceremony for less than a year and is feeling very, very intimidated. Especially since the ongoing conversation between Taijima-sama and Ohabrioba is currently lingering on the subject of her knowledge of clan history. Kita-chan, Taijima addresses her abruptly, explain the Uchiha's clan's lineage system. Kita lowers her tea. She can't put it down, she hasn't finished it yet. The Uchiha clan's system of lineages is based on the heritability of the Mangekyo, the form taken by the grief of one who has manifested the Sharingan, she says, taking care to keep her tone soft and measured. The clan currently has 8 known lineages. Most prominent of these is the Amaterasu lineage, to which the Outguard head traditionally belongs. Properly she should say, to which both Outguard and Homeguard head traditionally belong, but Taijima-sama has changed the rules there, and it would be impolitic to draw attention to that. In addition to the 8 known lineages, the clan has records of an additional 9 Mangekyo manifestations, but the details of those family lines have been lost. Should any member of the clan manifest one of these 9 historic Mangekyo, they would immediately be formally established as head of that clan lineage. There may be other unknown Mangekyo lineages within the clan, but as these have never been formally documented, they are unrecognized and unnamed. List the 8 lineages in order of current prominence. First is the Amaterasu lineage, the lineage of the Outguard head. Second is Yatagarasu, third is Raiden, fourth is Inari, fifth is Kojin, sixth is Toyotama, seventh is Kanjin and eighth is Yomitsushikome. Taijima-sama nods and turns back to Ohabrioba. Kita finishes her tea as swiftly as is polite, as it is not more than warm now. Hopefully they too will finish their tea soon, so that she can collect the bowls and leave to do the washing up. Setting down her cup, she waits for the adults to take the initiative. She has already eaten her yokan, sweets are eaten before drinking the tea, so she just has to sit tight and be patient. The tea finally crawls to a close and Kita is permitted to bow them out of the room and escape. After washing up she returns to the study, where Ohabrioba and Taijima-sama are waiting for her. Waiting with 2 fukusa draped boxes. This at least is a ritual she knows about, even if she's never experienced it for herself. A fukusa is not like a furoshiki. It is more expensive for one, and after admiring it and removing the gift from the box under the cloth, both box and cloth are returned to the gift giver. Kita duly admires the cloth embroidered with Amaterasu emerging from the cave and seeing her radiance in the mirror of Yata, carefully sets it to one side and opens the box. Within is a silk kimono in lush coral pink with a bold pattern of very pale blue ripples framing white cherry blossoms and the occasional white and red-orange fish, along with a silk nagajuban in deep red with a simple all-over purple-black scale print, a cotton undershirt and slip in mottled creamy yellow, white tabi, wooden zora and a sky blue obi heavily embroidered with red peonies, vibrant green grasses and a scattering of various bright-colored butterflies. It's an insanely extravagant gift. She can't turn it down. Legally she is in his care, so this is less something he is giving to her and more something he is buying to see her wear for his son, at the very least, wear on Madara's birthday next week. Taijima-sama is probably going to do this again, even. Slightly closer examination at least reveals that the kimono and obi have been previously worn, probably by his late wife. That is slightly less terrifyingly extravagant, even though everything else is stiff and new. Kita bows her head and offers suitably humble thanks for this magnificent treasure, carefully folds everything back into the paper wrappings and sets it to one side, then turns to Ohabrioba's gift. This fukusa is more modest, embroidered with a crane soaring above the setting sun and a turtle swimming through algae below. In the box underneath are a collection of kanzashi, 4 lacquered kogai hairpins that match the combs Hikaku and his brothers gave her, evidence that Ohabrioba had assisted them in selecting their gift, and 2 pairs of baira, 1 pair with chimes and 1 with tiny bells. There is also a packet of regular plain pins. Clearly Ohabrioba means to make sure she will no longer need to borrow hair ornaments. Kita offers her thanks, bows to both guests, and sees Taijima-sama out of the house. Ohabrioba then gives her time to put her gifts away and change into her everyday kimono before enlisting her to help make dinner. The duck soba is very nice, both to cook and, once the boys are back, to eat. It settles her nerves. The sweet red bean paste dessert is also wonderful. However, this has definitely been the most stressful birthday of her life. Kita hopes very much it is not the start of a trend. Madara fidgets with the hilt of his sword as he sits on a tree branch, his eyes on the road at the bottom of the short drop mere yards away from his perch. Kita gave him hilt wrappings and a cord to tie his sword to his belt made of her hand-reared green silk for his birthday, which he has taken to fiddling with while waiting around outside the clan lands. They're beautifully soft, and have more given them than any of his previous accessories, so when they eventually wear out he's probably going to ask her for another set. Ohabrioba's wedding went smoothly, but she's still at Hikaku's house most days to teach Kita about being a member of the Amaterasu lineage and eventual home guard head. Madara thinks Kita will be good at it. She certainly has an eye for loopholes and the creativity to take advantage of them. Just look at what Madara is doing now, hiding up a tree on a mission which had started out as arson and murder and has turned into trickery and theft. The tea caravan, carrying the southern peninsula's new Sincha harvest and the shade-grown jade tea that will be hand-ground for matcha, is due to pass by today. When they're not exactly sure, but rice planting hasn't even started yet, so father has granted Madara the services of the clan's crow summoner, one of his Yatagarasa's second cousins, who currently has a bird circling overhead. Talking to Kita about the tea trade prompted him to do a little research along the way here, so he now knows that there are only 3 parts of Fire Country where tea leaves suitable for being ground into matcha are grown, and that this tea caravan has won the privilege of supplying the daimyo and the country's temples for 3 years running, due to their leaves having pleasant umami undertones in addition to the usual fresh, subtle flavor. These merchants and the tea plantations they collaborate with won't be entirely bankrupted by the loss of that contract. They supply plenty of other teas to the wider market later in the season, but they will have to make adjustments for not getting returns on their investment, and reduce their expenditures accordingly. Madara can't say he's surprised that this group's competitors have resorted to sabotage, jealousy, and envy underpin so many of the contracts offered to the Uchiha, but at least the strategy Kita helped him put together means that the tea won't go to waste. It won't arrive at the capital in time to compete for the highest prices on new tea or be included in the annual matcha competition for supplying the temples and the daimyo, but it will arrive at a market, it will be sold, and it will be bought. Probably at lower prices than intended to, so it will reach a wider audience than merely priests, monks, and the capital's wealthiest officials. Madara knows that his father will be keeping a large quantity of the matcha-grade leaves for the clan. The umbrella bags, and that name has stuck, allow for fully airtight storage so the tea will not sour or degrade. Rather than buying small amounts of matcha fresh every month in case of guests, and having to use it up regularly, they can now store it indefinitely in powder form, which means being able to buy in bulk and of a higher grade. Or in this case, steal in bulk, although they will have to pay for it to be properly stone ground. The contract simply requires them to destroy the caravans so that no tea arrives in the capital before June, so ambushing them with blunt force trauma and subtle genjutsu, emptying the carts and then picking a different ambush point for the next round is easy enough. The next caravan is likely to be much better guarded though, so Madara has made clear to the 40 clansmen under his command that they are to ensure none of the merchants remember exactly who it was they were ambushed by, making them think it was bandits is fine, and to keep jutsu use to a minimum. No need for anyone to realize this is an Uchiha operation, which would inspire them to hire Senju. That's going to happen over the rice later, since they have to be visible for the intimidation factor. They're in sight, his cousin Eboshi says abruptly. Not going to be in range for a good hour though. A jutsu lets him see the world through his summon's eyes, a highly effective scouting method when crows are ubiquitous. Madara reaches for his umbrella bag and pulls out his bento. May as well eat first then. It's going to be a busy 6 weeks. He's grateful Kita's seal has a volume limit rather than a weight limit, and that she can fit the entire contents of a storehouse in one twice over. They're probably going to need all of that. He had no idea people drank so much tea.